I call to order the North Andover School Committee meeting of Thursday, November 7th, 2024. The time is 7:03, I think, officially. If you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we'll jump right into our consent agenda. We have the minutes for October 10th, 2024. If the members could review those.
I'll say I'd like to move that we accept the minutes as presented in the packet. Whenever everybody else is ready.
I'll second.
All right, any other discussion? All right, take a roll call vote. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes, those are approved. All right, and we have a couple of grants, which is exciting always.
We have two grants. One was awarded to our 5 elementary library media specialists. It was a $500 grant for each library media specialist from the Northeast STEM Network, so a total of $2,500. They used the money to purchase supplies and materials for lessons on coding and engineering design. Let's do one at a time.
This one, yeah, let's do one at a time.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the Northeast STEM Network mini grant in a total of $2,500.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Just to discuss, so when we accept them, we as the school committee, we're voting to accept the grants, and that's it?
Yes.
We're just saying
We
the
are
school should use it?
accepting.
Okay, but we have no further due diligence that we have to do in terms of how the money is spent or tracked?
Well,
That's not on
typically
the
when these
committee?
grants come in, they're for a specific purpose,
Yeah.
such as this one. They're coming in for a specific
For that.
purpose for which they have to be used.
Okay, and that's something Superintendent Lathrop, that you then monitor that it goes to?
Correct.
Okay.
Carol Arkham, the STEM director, this is a grant that she wrote, and so she monitors it. She she'll report back to the Northeast Foundation STEM Network and whatever their guidelines are for spending. But as school committee, you accept the grants.
Accept the grant.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
since generally speaking, we're in favor of your getting money and spending it, it's probably worth thinking about why somebody or other put in there that we need to have a vote each time. I mean, I suppose you can say, because it's always been that way. The only thing I can think of is that when a grant is used for something that expires, it suggests that we will have to continue it. I'm not saying what it is. I'm just saying, since we always do this, it might be worth pausing to consider why it makes sense for us to do it.
I think it is a
Yeah.
legal requirement that you have to accept the grant money because it's funds that are coming into the district.
But that's sort of part of what Ms. Cormier's question is about. What does she need to worry about? Why shouldn't she? What should all of us be thinking about when we vote yes? What is the consequence beyond the short-term consequence that you're going to spend it, which we're all in favor of?
Well, I think from the statutory purpose, I mean, as a school committee, we have a responsibility of the budget and finances of the school. And I think any grant that comes in affects that. So we do have to vote that in and just make sure that that's being allocated to where it's supposed to go.
Right. And in essence, if you didn't think it supported the district or the mission and the goals of the district, you could say that you don't want to accept those funds for North Andover Public
want all the
Schools.
money.
I'm with you.
If per se there was an organization that we didn't agree with their philosophy or their
philosophy.
ideas that were
Okay,
trying to give
alright.
us money, we could say no.
We're still
Yep.
having these earmarking funds for inappropriate use.
Yeah.
We reject that.
Okay.
Well, but it could also be that, I mean, as has happened here, in fact, we took some federal money for an ongoing purpose, and then we got embarrassed because we had to stop it.
Yep.
I mean, I know from the from a legislature's point of view, that's why they vote on this. They don't want to get stuck. The governor goes out and gets a grant, so everybody's happy, and then a year later, the governor comes to the legislature and say, look, you guys are going to be politically hurt if you don't come up with state money to do this.
I think it also helps with transparency when it comes before the school committee. The community knows what grants were coming in, where they're coming from, and how much we're accepting.
And I think it's a nice kudos to our staff when they apply for some grants on their own. Some are, obviously you'll hear about federal grants, but these are grants that, are smaller grants, but still very substantial. And many of them, the next one I'm going to talk about is one that just our assistant principal did on her own. So I think that's always good to hear.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Did we vote on that one?
We do. We need to.
Yeah, that was my question.
So,
Did we?
no. All right. Any further discussion? All right. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Cormier? And I vote yes. All right.
The next one is a grant that Caroline Beasley. Caroline is our assistant principal at North Andover Middle School. She wrote through the Essex County Learning Community, which we're a member of that community. They were offering $2,000 mini grants, and she wrote one on behalf of their social emotional program called Thrive at the middle school, and the grant is going to be used for family engagement. So finding ways to engage their families with the program, getting families into the schools, helping families feel that activities are appropriate for their students. I think we heard from CPAC about this in the past, making sure that school activities are appropriate for all students. So that's some of the ways that they're going to be using these funds.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the grant from the Essex County Learning Community, the Power Place Learning Community Advisory Grant. And, we don't know how much money.
$2,000, sorry.
For $2,000.
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Okay. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right. So we are taking new business earlier on the agenda than we normally do, because we do have a little presentation on this one. So if you would like to, if our student reps could just take a little side trip for a moment.
We have Scott Green, who is our world language teacher, coming up to talk about a trip that he would like to take some students on.
Good evening. My name is Scott Green. I'm a math teacher at high school. Thank you all for
sorry, math. I said world
pushing me up in
language.
the agenda, but also getting me on the agenda. Especially with short notice, we were trying to kind of get the ball rolling on this process early to allow planning to happen for students and families to prepare. The premise of the trip is a 9-day tour of England and Scotland for April 2026, April vacation. The trip will span from Edinburgh, Scotland, down through the country, making stops
Just might wanna
in
pull it up.
areas. Ooh,
Lynn, can you click on that link? Sorry.
Nope, that's fine. It's helpful to have it up. Making stops in various parts of the country, from Edinburgh, Scotland, all the way down to London, stopping in places like Birmingham, Yorkshire, Stratford-upon-Avon, and Oxford and Windsor. To me, this trip actually holds a special place in my heart because when I was a freshman in high school, I got to go on a trip with our music department. Our band, chorus, and orchestra did a trip similar to this. It was music-based. We played in concerts and performed, but we had a couple of similar stops along the way. And I knew that as a student, I loved the idea of traveling. It was my first international experience. I got to do it once again as a junior. And ever since I wanted to be a teacher, which was around my junior year, I knew that how important trips like this were for learning, for growing as individuals and students, and even the adults that take part in them as well. And so the goal one day of being able to bring this to fruition and be a leader on a trip, which is something that always excited me. And this kind of fell in my lap, or into my mailbox, I should say, I guess. And through working with EF, they've been extremely helpful with how much they've organized in terms of planning, preparing for, providing all the information, all the safeguards, to make a really educational experience and also a really kind of well-rounded experience for students to go on the trip. I'd be happy to answer any questions
And then I know we have the typical form that gets filled out. Has that been done yet?
Field trip request.
Field trip request form, thank you.
Yes, I believe I
Yes.
did that.
Kristen Ando has that, but we asked Scott to come because this is a new trip that you haven't heard before.
Okay, yeah.
Just to give you a little update, and then Kristen will present the trip to you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So we're just hearing right now?
You're
We're
just
not taking
hearing
anything?
right now about it,
Perfect.
yeah.
Okay.
Question? What's the target student population for this?
I'm hoping to access students that normally wouldn't go on trips like this. We have a lot of groups that do trips, like our Spanish department does the exchange program, and it's usually a lot of students that are, excelling in the Spanish language
Right.
classes, the foreign language class. They do the German trip. There's a trip that was just approved to go to the Galapagos Islands for February of the same year through the same company, and that is a very kind of science-based trip. And so when working on coming up with a destination and itinerary for this trip, the account manager that I've been working with and I talked about trying to find something that's going to be a little bit different to pull to a different population of students. I want to try to have this be a good kind of getting your feet wet for traveling for students that maybe wouldn't normally think it's possible. It's not as exotic and terrifying in that sense. The language is something they're comfortable with. The food is not all that different. I did my second trip in high school I did to China, and that was a very big culture shock for me, but also a lot of students hadn't traveled before. So this I see as like a getting away for students that maybe wouldn't normally be in the classes or the groups like DECA or the band groups that go on these trips, to be able to explore and kind of see a different part of the world.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I love travel. I think it's one of the greatest things to do. They've given us a range here. So I guess when it comes time for us to officially approve it, there could be a variance in terms of how many days kids might or might not miss from
Correct.
either Thursday and Friday or just Friday.
Yeah.
So we should just note that on the form. Not that it makes a big difference, but just
Yeah.
include that information that there's some details that we don't know because it's so far out and they don't do
Definitely,
things
yeah.
efficiently.
Yep.
And I love the different things that they're going to get to do, and even go to the West End in London to see a show. I hope it's in the West End. It says a theater show, so it better be in the West End. It's amazing.
Any other comments or questions?
Well, I guess the question about what about kids who couldn't afford to go, how does that work in this case?
Definitely. That's a great question. That's a big thing that definitely came up when I was first talking to them about planning this, of wanting it to be something that's accessible for a lot of our students. Part of the initiative of trying to get this approved so early is to allow that planning for families. Even though it's in 2026, it feels like a long way away. It can get here very quick. Yeah, so it's not for this school year, but for the following school year. And what EF does is they allow students and families to pay off on a biweekly or a monthly basis, so that can kind of lessen the cost and lessen the blow at once. They also have extensive fundraising from past practices, other schools that they've used. Each student that enrolls gets a personalized fundraising page that I can keep track of and watch for, and kind of give hints and reminders of, hey, don't forget, you're getting this close to your goal. We can set targets on, how much we want to try to fundraise for each individual by a certain date. Having that over a year to plan, it's a little less than 18 months. Having that can be really good to help with budgeting and figuring that out for them, and like working with them on an idea of this is a target, we want to have this much by this date. And then doing group fundraisers as well to kind of collectively add to our savings as a group for things like tips for the tour guides and bus drivers and the tour director that's with us for the entirety of the trip.
What is the projected cost?
Projected cost is $4,409, which is a lot. It includes all airfare, the bus transportation throughout the country, the hotels, the tour guides, the walking tour guides, the entry into the castles, the museums, the shows, breakfast and dinner, lunch on some days as well. Lunch and money for gifts and whatnot would be up to the students and baggage fees. But otherwise, it includes all those other costs for travel and transportation. And the projected monthly cost is $270.
Any other questions? I love that this is open to other students. You know, think it does sometimes make it difficult. You know, French students are able to go to France, and Spanish students are able to go to, you know, Spain or and so for this to be open to the kids who maybe don't have those other opportunities, I think is really amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you for presenting this.
Thank you so
Although
much.
we should probably point out that particularly in Glasgow, Scots do not necessarily speak a language that we all understand.
True. Fair enough. Yeah.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to communications, we have our student representatives report as Harper, Allie, and Cece scoot back into place. We'll turn it over to you.
To start, senior drum and picks happened on Election Day. It was unofficial. It was organized by some of the moms from North Andover moms. AP Gov had a mock election last Wednesday. NHS acceptances went out on Tuesday, and the induction ceremony is the 13th at 6:30. The blood drive for NHS was successful. The goal was 24 units of blood, and they got 26, and there were a lot of first-time donors, which is great. The Drama Guild also held a fundraiser on Election Day, selling concessions to voters to raise money for Cinderella. Senior photos for seniors are due next Friday, the 15th. And our student council met with Ms. Holman this week to talk about cell phone policy, and then 5 students, including myself, met with her yesterday morning with a committee of teachers to talk more about it.
All right, so Service and Environmental Club did a campus cleanup today. It went really well, according to Louine. German, Spanish, and French National Honor Society inductions were yesterday on Wednesday. Fall sports are finishing up, and MVC championships are happening. That's Merrimack Valley Conference Championships. Winter sport registration is due November 18th. NESBA Marching Band finals were on November 3rd. I believe we placed 3rd out of the groups. Unified Basketball hosted a game on October 24th, and their next game is next Wednesday in Lowell. And Picture Retake Day is tomorrow for the high school.
Yeah, soft. North Andover High School is hosting the annual NEMASC Fall Conference, which is the Northeast Massachusetts Association of Student Councils. And Student Council is holding a food drive. It's called Turkey a Teacher, where the participating teacher with the most food donations gets to wear a turkey costume for the whole day. It's pretty great. Yeah.
Gets to wear it.
Yeah, they get to they choose to participate. Last year was Mr.
Is
Delakai.
that a positive incentive or a negative incentive?
Positive.
Really? The more money I raise, the more likely I have to wear it?
Positive for the students.
Well, yeah. No, I know, but it's the teacher you're trying to incent, right?
I mean, they get to wear like a fun turkey onesie all day. It must be really comfy, right?
Yeah.
like a blast.
And more incentive for students to bring in food, like to put in front of their teachers' classrooms, less for like the teacher to promote. But yeah,
Yeah.
Really embarrass the teacher.
a little bit.
College visits are coming to an end, and seniors are submitting their early action and actually just college applications already. Me personally, I'm on it.
How many people come from colleges?
It depends on the school. For a school like UMass Amherst, there was a lot of people. I want to say there was like 40, 50 people. But for smaller schools like Babson, I think there was like 5
Yeah,
people.
sometimes there can be as little as like 3 or 4 people who go to a college
Yeah.
visit.
I was thinking of it the other way around. How many colleges come here?
A
Oh,
lot.
we have a lot.
A
There's
lot.
several a day.
Wow.
They're like not every day of the week, but a good amount each week. Probably 10 schools a week-ish.
Yeah, it's been going on since like September. So like
It's a really great resource.
it's really helpful. Yeah, I find them really helpful. I've been to a lot. The choir band and band are they fundraised on election day, handing out hot cocoa while they sang and played music, asking for donations. And I'm pretty sure there's a band concert tonight. And this year, I'm pretty sure the student ambassadors, they're starting the first annual alumni versus senior turkey toss, which is very exciting. Get to see back your old friends and
Toss a
yeah,
turkey.
toss a turkey. That's it.
As long as they don't toss this teacher that's wearing a turkey.
It is a frozen, not live turkey.
Turkeys are kind of big for that, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Any
Well,
follow-up questions, comments?
yes, if I may. So I'm curious about if you wouldn't mind giving us like a 1-minute summary of the cell phone discussion.
Yeah, on Monday we talked a lot about just kind of like how we move forward and how we I'm like losing the word, but procedure for like how we go about it. We talked about doing surveys for students, teachers, and parents to kind of get all of the input, and we talked about what questions we want to ask, especially questions that we could kind of see the differences between what teachers think about the policies and then what students think, because right now it's kind of teacher discretion. And then on yesterday morning, the 5 students, including me, met with a committee of teachers and kind of talked about again, more concerns and how we wanted to go about it, and also kind of what we felt like teachers and students were kind of wanting to get out of it.
So at the moment, it's teacher discretion in an individual classroom, whether you can have them
Yeah.
out, whether you have to put them in a basket, or all of those are possible?
Yeah, I feel like getting closer to senior year, a lot of teachers mostly leave it up to the students to like be responsible with it, and then if it becomes a problem, address it. But there are some teachers in the school that have like pockets to put it in and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
What
there
are
a-
some of
Sorry, go ahead.
What are some of the concerns that teachers and students were talking about?
Students a lot, I think, are very concerned. We're concerned about the possibility of phones being fully taken away, which the teachers were saying is not what they want, and is something that neither student or teacher thinks is correct. We also talked about that kind of after high school, we'll have to be able to manage it on our own, and coming up with a policy that kind of sets us up for success after high school is important. The teachers also expressed concern about not just people paying attention in class, but more the mental health aspect of technology on students and being more concerned about students in that regard.
Do you think in the conversations that you're starting to find a combined path forward, or do you think there's still a lot to do there? You getting there?
There's definitely similarities in thoughts on not wanting to fully take them away and setting up for success, but there's definitely still a lot getting feedback and stuff and coming up with stuff.
So path, but not there yet.
Do you sense that there's, on the whole, teachers are in a different place than students, or is there a fair bit of overlap?
I think a little bit. There's definitely, I think, maybe a little bit more frustration on the teacher side, but at least in the meeting we had yesterday, some of the frustrations between students and teachers were similar.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate the feedback and reports. All right, you may shift back to the side.
With your awesome name.
On top of
Take the name tags.
Taking
Love
your
the name
text.
tags. Love them.
The sharks.
I want one.
The flowers. I know. I feel very lucky. I feel very honored.
I know.
Little stickers or something.
I know, but not as
Yeah.
nice as those.
Well, no.
I know. I might have to start adorning this. We have to bring stickers for this.
Make it cute. All right, do we have any public comment? None? Okay. We will move on to recognitions. Do we have any
I
recognitions?
do have a recognition. Let me see where I put it, though. I think we've heard before about Project 350. Project 350 is from our middle school. We select an ambassador, and this is a project that is within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the ambassador from North Andover Middle School. Really, their job is to come together with other 8th graders, and the group works on building community, cultivating kindness, transforming lives, and working through community service. And I'm blanking on the name of our student who is Ben, thank you. Has talked a lot about that work and it continued on. So the middle school, they had their selection of the Project 350 ambassador. They had Brooke Tinner, Jack Teresi, Pierce Leary, Nora Luz, Madison Nam, and Rosa Mancuso were all nominated to be the 350 ambassador. They selected Pierce Leary, and the alternate is Brooke Tinner, so we just want to congratulate them for that and for the students who were nominated. That's quite an honor. That's what I have for recognition tonight.
All right, roundtable reports, an opportunity for the committee to report on any community events that they've had an opportunity to participate in or want to talk about.
Some upcoming stuff?
We're almost there.
No,
That's the next thing.
Oh, no, and then, I see. Never mind.
All right. All right, we're going to go into some upcoming community events. Did you want to add some first,
Yep.
Ms.
So we
Lathrop?
have at the Thompson School, they're having a Thompson School cleanup on November 23rd. For the month of November, the Atkinson School is doing a food drive. On November 13th, did you say that the North Andover, what's happening on November 13th for the high school students?
NHS ceremony.
Yes. Induction.
Induction night. Okay, we have a little overlap of events, but we'll figure it all out. November 13th is the LPAC Parent Advisory Group. So that is our English Learner Parent Advisory Group that's led by Nicole Wright. They're meeting on November 13th at Stevens Memorial Library from 5 to 7:30. And I just brought for you, just as a reminder of our translation machine that we have. So we were able to send out flyers just so you get a little chance to see. I'll send a few this way. There's English and then just a couple other languages and you can share. But we sent that out. But we really hope that parents will want to attend or family caregivers want to attend. It's at North Andover Stevens Memorial Library. They'll serve some pizza. We have some high school students that are coming to help with little ones, so you don't have to worry about childcare. You can bring them along. And this event, they're going to have some guest speakers from the YMCA and from the North Andover Youth Center to help families learn some of the resources and some of the activities that their students could participate, that some of their children, not their students, can participate in. Then on November 14th, I believe, is they had the college fairs that come to North Andover High School, but on the 14th, they're going to have a college financial info night because being willing to go to college is a costly endeavor these days, and so they're having a night to talk about college finances. And I just want to mention that on November 12th, I'll be attending the FinCom meeting, and on November 18th, I'll be attending the select board meeting.
Can you talk about what's the college financial night?
November 14th. Writing that down, I like it.
Could I ask a question about
Yes.
that, Pam? So we have staff members who counsel students applying for college or work with them or coordinate, or how does that work?
So I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly how it works, but Meg Pinkston, do you know, having just had a college senior, high school senior?
So the guidance counselors at the high school do work, and you guys could, work with their students around the college process. There's also something that students create an account for, it's called Naviance. And that in and of itself, that program, once you put your interests, your, where your comfort level is around big city, small town, et cetera, and your do you want a school with a lot of athletics? Do you want a theater program? And then your intended major, and then it pops out sort of matches for you. Then you work with your guidance counselor around those matches. They have the college fairs that are arranged so that and the guidance counselors encourage the students to go to the ones that have been matched with them. And then they bring in an outside speaker around the college financial sort of advice. And, they talk about the FAFSA, which can be a very cumbersome process, there's the new form, to be honest, although it was disastrous as the rollout last year, it actually was less cumbersome than the original form. I did just log on to FAFSA this week, And they said, because normally in and around October is when it is open, and that the 25-26 FAFSA is still coming. It's being worked on. So,
Anything else our student representatives want to add?
Yeah, the guidance counselors are definitely a really big part of the Sorry.
Oh, I think she got it on.
Oh, did she? Yeah. Oh, okay. The guidance counselors are definitely a really big part of the process. They're very, very helpful. I know I've met with my guidance counselor many, many times, and they can help. They can also help come up with more colleges if you're not finding them on Naviance. I know my guidance counselor helped me come up with a couple more safeties, and she asked, if you don't like any of that, tell me why so that I can help you find more. They're also very helpful with, the recommendations and all that stuff. They're just a very good resource.
Did any of you take the summer community programs, college readiness with the Common App in the college essay course?
I did not.
I took a summer college course in this random college up in Maine.
Oh.
It was law, but it was great. Unrelated,
So
sorry.
the other piece around preparing students for college is that our own community programs runs a course, a few different sessions through the summer, which all three of my kids took and was a blessing. It helps set up the Common App, which can be cumbersome for some kids. Most colleges that students apply to have the Common App. So they really want you to get that right. So they help you to do that, and they help you set up your college essay. And then they work, it's a partnership. Meg Pinkston and I believe Diane Bassett, who's a retired teacher from North Andover High School, co-teach it, and they work through the essay so that you've hit the highlights of what colleges are looking for in selling yourself and your experience.
If I could add two things. So my kids did the same thing a
Right?
couple of years
Weren't
back.
you glad?
Yes.
I was glad.
It was super helpful. And then also the high school guidance counselors make themselves available to parents for meetings with their student together to help keep the parents up to date on what's going on and help them be part of the process. So that's open to people if they don't know that.
So just a question back to probably the student advisors as well. Is any of those processes that you were going through for college, was there any part of it where anyone helped you figure out sort of the financial implications of, for example, the cost of college we know can be overwhelming, thinking about what career you're going to have after college and kind of what the right investment is in your education for your future kind of career paths? Was there anyone that kind of helped with that budgeting and math for making those decisions?
At least for me personally, my guidance counselor has talked to me about the in community scholarship program that the high school holds, which I think a lot of those applications come later this year, and she's told me a lot about that and told me where to find that on the website as a resource to find a lot of those outside scholarships that aren't necessarily from schools but are helpful nonetheless.
Okay. For the scholarship piece. Okay. Thank you.
And I think, as Lynn said, the night of the 14th, they'll have a financial analyst there talking about college costs.
Because that's the big, what does it mean to invest this much in college and your education? But, what's your average salary going to be? Where do you,
Right.
what's the right choice?
Yep. And I have one more thing. On November 10th from 9 to 12 at North Andover High School is the Recycling and Energy Drive free dehumidifier drop-off. This is for North Andover and Andover residents only. Again, that's Sunday, November 10th.
Okay. I want to add Thompson 5th grade is having a fundraiser tomorrow night at China Blossom. Doors open at 6:30. It's $60 a person at the door. That includes the buffet and then comedians afterwards. I think they have 3 comedians lined up. So if anybody's looking to get out, it's going to be a really fun night. I'm really looking forward to it. So you can buy your tickets at the door, $60 a person. Doors are open at 6:30.
Madam Chair, a few things to add. The Veterans Day Parade's coming up on Monday, and I believe we've all been invited to participate in that. All the school committee members. I'm going to be judging the robotics tournament at one of the judges, so putting the pitch in for that at the high school on November 23rd, Saturday. And then my first health advisory committee meeting is coming up next week. Wednesday the 13th.
All right.
And it has a robust agenda that they emailed me.
All right.
I can't believe it's only going to take an hour, but we'll see.
Okay, thank you.
One
All right,
small
yes, Ad.
little plug. On the 20th of November, the first trimester course students will be, because it's still under repair at the middle school, they'll be singing at the high school auditorium. I believe it's a celebration of the 80s.
Oh,
So
that sounds
I get to go to
fun.
my first chorus concert.
Thank you.
Nice.
All right. All right, school committee community chats. Just a comment on that. The conference room at the Stevens Memorial Library is not available for all the dates that we have selected. So we can split them up and do some there or some at central office, or we can just go across the board and do them all at central office. It is what the committee would prefer.
All at central office.
You just do them all at central office.
Well, how much easier is it for people to go to the library?
Yeah, and there's something else for their kids to do if they want to come. Well, you know, they're supposed to.
I mean, that was the idea, right? More participation.
I mean, we've had them at the library in the past. I mean, I know I've done one at the library where maybe one or two people had come in, wasn't very active. So I don't know if it's being at the library made it more active. I don't think that was necessarily true.
Right, so then maybe we just come here.
I
then.
was at one that was really well attended there, though. That was nice to have the space. But I think it's a good point, though, having somebody just mentioned it, something for the kids to do if the parents want to attend. So-
Nobody's going to wander in here by chance, but people do go in the library.
So if the library's available, let's do that, and then
Yeah.
let's come here.
Okay. And I know there were times that the library, we may have to shift our hours too, depending on if they have programming in their room. And what I'll have Michelle reach out to you,
Okay.
Kelly,
Oh,
and
all
have
right.
you coordinate all that. Okay. Around the district.
All right.
Back over to you, Ms. Lathrop.
Before I start, at the last meeting, you approved the MOA with the stipends, with the stipend committee. And part of that MOA was that we were transferring, or that we were taking $10,000 from the education account to cover the 1% raise. So I have a letter of I need you to approve the transfer of funds. So this is a request to transfer $10,000 from the training and education or the tuition reimbursement account to cover the $10,000 for the MOA to pay the 1% increase to the coaches in the after-school stipends.
So do we need a question about that, if I may? So that $10,000, though, the union has given us their.
You signed the MOA, you all agreed to the
Right.
MOA last week, so everybody has agreed that we're going to,
To
in
do
order
this.
to increase their stipends, that they're going to remove $10,000 out of a fund that's sort of their earmarked fund for tuition reimbursement.
Right.
But now I need you to approve that transfer so I can move the money into the correct account
Got
so
it,
that we
okay.
can give them the 1%
So
raise.
that's the money we already had in the budget. We're just moving it over to pay for something different.
You're moving it-
The remaining additional money that we don't have, that we all approved, that's where we get that and where that money comes from is
Oh,
still
that's
open.
to be,
That's to
right.
be determined because
Yeah.
we're over budget.
But you're
Okay.
moving the $10,000 from tuition reimbursement to stipends.
So move.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Great.
That back.
Thank you very much. Do you want to just initial that? Thanks.
No matter where.
Anywhere. Thank you so much. All righty. So on my first slide tonight, I decided to sort of give some props to our North Andover High School mock election. I hope you all participated in the mock election. So that was held led by seniors Mia Bono, Megan Daly, Madison Shagru. They're students in the AP United States Government and Politics course that's taught by Diane Faramuth. They had a faculty voting. There's Carol Larkham there. She and I went over together to vote. And then there was a station. I cut off the sophomores. I'm sorry. I'm their sign. But there was a station for each group to go over. And they voted on two things, the presidential election, and they voted on the question about the MCAS. I did not hear the final results from the school. Do you know?
I do know. The school voted for in general Kamala Harris, and then also to get rid of MCAS as a graduation requirement.
All right, so you got it 50% right, or 50% to the way that the nation
turnout,
went.
yeah.
Yes, the turnout. So that's that picture. And then moving on, some of the things that I've been doing. So I had my in-person office hours on October 28th. I held it here at Central Office. There were about 6 to 8 people that attended. It was really nice to be able to have some people here. The topics ranged from asking questions about special education, having some concerns about services their students are receiving in special education, to questions about food services, and why it appears as though some students have more access to fruits and vegetables than others. We talked about some of the questions are about the opportunity for bringing back authors into the schools, some of the things that were maybe post-COVID, bringing some of those presentations back into the schools. There are some questions about the budget, questions about what PTOs are allowed to fund in their schools, wanting to know if there was a mechanism for PTOs to get together to look at some maybe larger items that they might be able to do collectively. Some questions about the North Andover Education Foundation that it's still, so there was a parent that's done some research. It's still on the books. They still do some filing. But maybe resurrecting that and wanting to reach out. So some really great conversations during the office hours. Lynn joined me for the in-person one. On the 29th, I participated in the SEAM. So SEAM is another one of the collaboratives that we belong to. I participated in the board of directors meeting. It was a pretty good meeting. I will say that SEAM has shared with us that they have an increase coming up next year, but it is helpful to know that increase now in terms of planning. On October 29th, I did my first journal recording for the North Andover CAM Journal. That link there, you do not have to touch it, Lynn. But it'll be out there if anybody wants to see the journal recording. I'll work on my my television skills a little bit, maybe as this moves along. On October 30th, we had our Celebrating Educators event. I want to thank the school committee members that were able to attend. We held it this year at the North Andover Historical Society. It was really nice and intimate. Diane from Diane's Cafe provided some treats for everybody. It was a really lovely evening. So at that event, we honor all of our teachers who receive professional teaching status. There's an opportunity for them to come forward and receive a small gift from their principal. And then through the school committee, you bring forth the educator who you nominate into the Educator Hall of Fame. This year it was Lisa Bernard. Lisa is a retired kindergarten teacher from North Andover, and she is loved. And if you didn't know that, you knew it by being there that night. She had students who are all grown up and have families of their own, who were her kindergarten students who came to honor her. She had past parents, caregivers that came to honor her. Many of her colleagues came. They were able to take a picture of sort of their old school together, and that picture there is some of her students that came to honor her. So it was a really, really lovely evening. I think it's great. Juliette Darmon, who is the president of North Andover Teachers Association, was there, and she gave a really touching speech to both the new teachers who are becoming professional status and sort of what that means. And then really a nice, even though she doesn't know Lisa Bernard, a nice tribute to her and her contributions to North Andover and to teaching. And then Lisa's speech just was remarkable. She will be coming back to give the keynote at opening day next year. And I said to her, you could just do that same speech. It was just so lovely. On November, I can't believe it's November, on November 4th, we had our principal and central office operation meeting. So the outcomes of that meeting was to update our leadership team on a variety of topics. So typically what happens is the central office staff, so Lynn, Mike Grant, who's technology, Greg, Landry, personnel and operations, Kristen Ando, teaching and learning, will give some sort of updates to our principals and leaders about things that they need to know. And then our big work this time was looking at the budget and brainstorming some budget solutions. So we've started that process of, if we were to make some reductions this year, what are some things that we might be able to do? I'm not ready to share that with you yet, but we are in the process. And I applaud the principals for doing the hard work and looking very critically at their schools. Our focus, what could we do? What would be the impact if we did that? What would be the cost savings of that? Not saying that everything on the list is going to happen, but it was a way for us to talk and share some ideas and generate some good ideas. And I will continue that work when I have the complete leadership team, which is on November 13th. On November 4th, I had virtual office hours, so I did that one during the evening. Again, that was well attended. I would say there were 6 or 7. Again, there were topics of special education that came up. There are some same topics of computer use, so asking some questions about why we're in a 2-to-1 in our elementary setting, and if we might be reconsidering that moving forward for FY26. There were some really great questions about how we make determinations about what things get into the budget. So that was great. I'm trying to think what else. I do have a sort of notes that I took. There were some questions about things that the PTO should be PTO wondering when they're fundraising, if their fundraising is going towards sort of fun activities for the school, or if the PTO should be thinking about maybe supplementing things that the school might not be able to provide for. So I think it's a further discussion. We will be having hopefully a PTO president's meeting where they all come together, because I think that's a question that we should really talk about a little bit, about the kinds of things. And one of the things we did talk a little bit about was equity, and what some PTOs can do and what other PTOs can't, and how some schools maybe have a smaller enrollment, and so the funding wouldn't be as much for them as a school that had a larger enrollment, if they were to do things like that. So it's definitely further conversations, but these have been really helpful for me just to hear some of the things. And the other that I should mention is lots of the people that commented really had very complimentary things to say about their teachers and about their children's path. And even though there were some things that they maybe that they struggled with, they felt that they had good teachers, and they had good experiences in their schools. And it was a nice mix of elementary and middle and high school families that participated. On November 5th, I attended a conference. ECLC is the Essex County Learning Community that we belong to. It was what they call their fall gathering, and the topic was conversations that we need to have, but we often avoid. They brought the author of the book High Conflict, Why We Get Trapped and How We Get Out of It, Amanda Ripley. I've heard her speak. I heard her speak at the summer Massachusetts School Superintendents Conference, and it was great to hear her speak again. I invited our union leadership to join me at this conference. It was conference day here in North Andover, so not everyone could attend, but our NADA president, Juliet Darmon, attended with me. That agenda that's on the pictures there just shows you some of the things that we were able to, they had a sort of a keynote, and then there were some other breakout sessions that we were able to go to. But it was a great day, and Juliet and I learned a lot together. And Juliet, even, I didn't put a picture up there, but she was, they asked for volunteers, so she was up volunteering, which was great to see. I think yesterday, Kristen Ando and I were able to go to the Atkinson School to see the Veterans Day program. And then yesterday, Kara Larkham and I drove to Hyannis. We were on a panel at the Massachusetts School Committee and Massachusetts School Superintendents Conference. We sat on a panel with with SEAM. Our topic was partnering with your collaborative, building capacity for Tier 1 supports through a shared instructional coaching model. So North Andover, there's 8 of us that participate in the SEAM collaborative in funding an instructional coach that works in all 8 of the districts. So we have our certain days. Her name's Emily Pat. And we've had some really great success with that work. Not only does it allow us to have a coach that doesn't cost us the same amount of funds that it might if we were hiring on our own. But one of the great benefits is that Emily works in 8 other districts. So she's able to sort of bring the resources of other districts into our district as well. This is our 3rd year working together. And then today I went to Franklin School to see the Veterans Day program there. And you don't have to play them because we're moving along. Do you want to play that one? I think so. Yeah, play that top one. This one is at Atkinson. You just have to hear this. Seriously, how cute. All right, you can stop that one for a second. Every grade, in both schools, every grade sings something, and the bottom one is just a cute video. These are all the veterans that are coming into the program at Franklin, and these are either parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, neighbors of the students in the school. Yeah, they had a really great turnout. They had a great turnout at Atkinson as well. You can stop that one. So the picture over here on the far left is Franklin School. So at the end, they did all of the veterans and whoever they're sort of connected to picture. And then the one in the middle is at Atkinson School and who they're connected to. Tomorrow, Thompson School is having a Veterans Day program. And next week, Sargent is. And I'm not sure when Kittredge is having theirs, but they're really great to see. So, oh, Lynn really likes it.
Thank you. And I did want to mention, going back to the Teacher Hall of Fame, you can nominate a teacher. So you can go on the school committee's website. There is a link where you can nominate. There's the forms to nominate a teacher. We encourage you to do that. You have until April 30th to do that, but sometimes it's a cumbersome process. So start early because we have to make some contacts to be able to get them the process done and approved to get them in. So I definitely encourage you, if you have a teacher that has made a huge impact on your life, go in, nominate them. Love to see more nominations.
It's the best part about being vice chair is running that process.
Yeah. Yeah. You absolutely
You can't.
But they have to be retired.
They have to be retired.
They have to. The 2 big qualifications is spend more than half their career in North Andover and been retired for 5 years at least.
All right.
So at this point, if you had somebody in elementary or middle school, that would be okay.
Yeah. Good. Great. All right. On to school committee chair updates. We have the North Andover Special Education Parents Advisory Council, also known as CPAC, here to present for us. We'll invite them up.
The old people that can't see
far
Yeah,
away.
just in
I
case.
think we're all right, though. I think we're okay.
I like that snazzy cover you got.
Thank you. My kids like it. It goes missing half the time. So thank you for having us tonight. We really appreciate it. My name is Sasha Weinrich. I am the president of the North Andover CPAC.
Lauren Stedman, Vice President of CPAC.
So we have a wonderful, wonderful board this year. They unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight, but Zora Warren, our treasurer, Rachel Anastasia, secretary, Megan O'Neill, the public relations chair. New to our board this year, we're very excited about Sheena Amini joining us. She's one of our members at large. So just so anyone who's watching understands, the CPAC membership is offered to all parents of children with disabilities and other interested parties. That's how it's defined in the law, which means that you don't have to have a child with disabilities to join CPAC. We would love to have as many folks that would love to join us and be part of our organization to come to our meetings or reach out to us. Our email is hello@northandovercpac.com. Questions, concerns, comments, please send us an email. So what do we do? I always think, and I think we did this last year as well, it's really helpful to just have the law up there, right? So Massachusetts Special Education Law, Chapter 71B, requires a school district to establish a PAC and assigns both an advisory and a participatory function to the PAC. So this is a little excerpt, of what does the CPAC do? So our duties shall include, but not be limited to, advising the school committee on matters that pertain to the education and safety of students with disabilities, meeting regularly with school officials to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of the school committee's special education programs. And the council shall establish bylaws, which we have updated bylaws in the last couple of years. We worked really hard on them. We looked to all different CPACs in Massachusetts to kind of find what best practices are and what would fit best for North Andover. So those were voted on and established last year. And in the course of our duties, the Parent Advisory Council shall receive assistance from the school committee without charge upon reasonable notice and subject to the availability of staff and resources. So what is special education? What does that mean, right? And Lynn probably can do a much better job than I can, but I'll do my best. So it means specially designed instruction or education given to a student at their instructional level, provided at no cost to the parents, to meet the unique needs of a child with disability. It also means adapting as appropriate to the needs of an eligible child, the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction. So the purpose is to address the unique needs of the child that results from the child's disability and to ensure access of the child to the general curriculum so that the child can, and this is the important part, right, meet the educational standards within the jurisdiction of the public agency that apply to all children. So we should presume competence, and we should provide accommodations and other supports so that our children with disabilities can be at the same level as all children.
And I think it's important to mention that while the word is special education, it's for a reason. It is special, it is unique because of that child's needs. Taking the blanketed approach that we are all the same and trying to have that equal type of conversation is actually ableist. That's ableism. So these children need a unique and special education for the reasons of their disability. Disability is not a dirty word. It's a word we need to be using more frequently, more often with our children, with our families out in the community, because without that, we are pretty much throwing the veil over what these children are challenged with, what some of their gifts are, and we're taking away why they require special education. They need more.
It's also why it's called an IEP. It's an individualized education plan. So we go to the next slide. So who do we serve, right? So how many kids in North Andover have a 504 or an IEP? It's about 32% of our public schools. So it's not just some kid you don't know. It's your neighbor's child, it's your cousin, it's your nephew or your niece. There are 32% of our student population have a 504 or an IEP.
Can I ask a question?
Please, absolutely.
Would you prefer they wait till the end, or do you want them as they come?
I think we
we
would
would
love for
prefer
this
just
to
have
be
a
as
conversation.
interactive.
Yeah.
If it's a big dialogue, we're happy to have it at the end. But yeah, absolutely.
Question on the numbers.
Yeah,
so
sure.
just wanted, so the numbers that you listed are. What do these include? Because I know we do have schools in town that aren't part of North Andover Public Schools. So are things like St. Michael's, are they included in are students on IEPs and 504s? Do you cover them? Do you serve them? Or is that outside because they're not in the public schools?
We do actually, and funny enough, we have a wonderful member of our community whose child actually goes to a private school, but is being served by the district on an IEP, and has recently gotten involved with CPAC as an organization because during the eligibility. Thank you so much for that word. It's been a very long day. Eligibility process. She reached out and we had conversations about what that looks like or how to approach that, because we want to be a resource to all families. We've even had families outside of North Andover reach out to us, quite frankly, because they posted a question on North Andover Moms Facebook group, and we've reached out, not knowing that they live in another community, and they still had questions. And of course, we want to be a resource for anyone.
Can I just to sort of frame up a little bit about that question? So these numbers include the students who have been identified as special education who may attend a different private school beyond even the North Andover Public Schools who live in North Andover. So they do not include the students who may go to St. Michael's who may be in special education, who come from Andover or Reading, et cetera.
So these, but in these, for example, not that we're going to break it down, but that 65 out of district could include a student who lives in North Andover and goes to St. Michael's.
No. Out of district is our out of district special education schools.
So,
Students that are placed out.
so is a student who lives in, so the example that I just had, so a North Andover student who goes to, on IEP, who goes to St. Michael's would not be in these numbers?
Would be in the numbers under their school, their neighborhood school.
Okay.
Yep.
And they're entitled to special education services. Sometimes, though, that means, so if a student like goes to St. Mike's and they need OT or PT or something, our specialists or people providers won't go there. Parent would bring them to the home school for their time, get the services there, and then bring them back to St. Mike's. But they are entitled to get the services, transportation not included.
Perfect. Those numbers, they're just attached
Embedded
to
in
their
those
neighborhood
schools.
school.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's a really good clarifying question. So how do they perform? So we, I think, all agree that MCAS is not a perfect measure, but it's the only one we have in terms of standardized data for comparing us to the state, unless there's something else you guys aren't telling me. Right, I assume this is all we have. So you can see that all students in the district are far performing North Andover students with disabilities. So what this essentially says is that we're looking at the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectations in ELA, math, and science. We're comparing the percentages from the district compared to those in the state. We chose kind of those big years, so grades 10, 3 to 8, and then in science it's 10 and 5 and 8. We can see here that we are not doing, I think, nearly what we need to be doing for our students with disabilities, both in the district and throughout the state.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are our special education students taking DIBELS and MAP testing, and are they showing like the range of growth similar to what our general education students are generally showing?
That's a question for Pamela.
Yeah, they wouldn't have access to that because only individual parents receive their students' DIBELS and their MAP testing. I would say that we're seeing growth in both DIBELS and MAP. But we do have a gap between our students and special education students and students who are not receiving special education services. So we are still seeing that gap in that testing. What MAP testing allows us to do is we need to work on interpreting our MAP testing better and using the data from the MAP testing to help us, because MAP testing will help you predetermine students who may not pass the MCAS. So we will continue to help our educators understand how to use that data, because it really gives you that opportunity of you're sort of predicting that these students may not pass, and so then what kinds of interventions do you need to put in place in order to help them? And then you give the MAP testing at other times. So if you have a student in the fall who's like predicted not to pass, hopefully the interventions you put in place are going to help you before you get to the MCAS testing. So we do see growth in our students, in all of our students and special education students, but we do see that we have students who still have gaps in their learning. And then DIBELS, we are using the DIBELS. We've always used the DIBELS. This year we've invested a lot of time and professional development in helping so we're using the Hill for Literacy in three of our schools, Atkinson, Thompson, and ABECC. And then we're using the MTSS model supported by Kristen Ando and the other schools. And the difference is because those other schools receive Title I funding, and that's how we're paying for the Hill for Literacy. So that's why we're starting there. We're hoping to move, but we're sort of using the same model in all of the schools. And what we are doing is helping our teachers and providers, our special education providers, understand the DIBELS, be able to determine what that student's focus area of need might be, and then progress monitor the students once, and then provide the lesson plan. We have trained all of our reading teachers this year using the lesson plan from the Hill for Literacy for their small group pullout reading instruction.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
The small group, that's really helpful.
I feel like I took over your presentation. I'm so sorry.
We both prefer an interactive presentation, so this is actually wonderful. So does that mean, just out of curiosity, when you say they're trained in that small group instruction using those tools, are you saying as at a tier 2 level, because those tier 3 students are then also receiving, I assume, Wilson or whatever is appropriate?
Correct.
Okay.
So in the tier 2 model, so it might be a tier 2 model where if you're meeting with a reading teacher in a tier 2 model where you're coming out of the classroom, but we're using the same, it might be a double dose of foundations, it's using some of the same materials. And so one of the things that, not to say that we're staying strictly with a Wilson product, but we do know that students do better when they hear the same kinds of language and are presented with the same kinds of materials. So Foundations comes from Barbara Wilson, and then Wilson, if you need to move into a tier 3 model program, and there's also Just Words for our 3 through 5 that we have started to train some teachers in, because we don't want to confuse our students if one program says this is how you say A, or this is how we approach something, and then a different program. But yes, to answer your question. Sorry, I feel like I've hijacked you.
I love this. I mean, I don't like the difference between the red columns and the green columns. Those numbers are really big, right? It makes me a little sadder, or have more feelings about the comparison between the two different red columns and between the district and the state. That we are just not really cutting it. And it's not a problem about us, it's a problem about special education services in the state, but I feel like we have an opportunity to be better, and to show others how to do better.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but and I don't have the raw data, I'm sure I could have asked for it, I just didn't, we ran out of time, but if you even, right, in some of those categories where the district is performing better than the state in all students, because that all student number also includes our students with disabilities, if we took that raw data and took out the students with disabilities, the variance between how our students with disabilities are performing and the students without disabilities in our district, that gap would be higher, I assume, than at the state level, if I'm kind of just thinking about basic math, right? Is that the right way to look at that, Pam, or no?
It could be. We are looking at that right now. So, I mean, we have drilled down to look at, and again, this is sort of grouping like 3 through 8 together, but we've looked at 3, we've looked at it by specific school, and pulling students out so we can see it. But the truth is, we do have a significant gap between students with disabilities and students without disabilities, and so it is something that we, it's hard to say we're trending the same as the state, because the state isn't doing well either. So that's not where we want to be.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's not like saying, hey, but we're just like the state. It's definitely an area that we're working on, and that is, we haven't had our MCAS presentation for our
Didn't mean to steal
yet.
your thunder.
No, that's okay. You're just sort of preempting some of the maybe more challenging news. But it's news that we know, and it is why we are investing a lot of our funds into early literacy. And I think that, one of the things that we talked about at one of the community office hours I had was a parent who was talking about her child, and not really, is much older now, but we didn't have the screeners for dyslexia at that time. And, not catching dyslexia until her student was older, and making it so much more difficult. And the challenge that puts on a parent, because lots of times if your child is not diagnosed correctly, or if you don't know, that parents want their kids to do the right thing. And so parents can put pressure on their children. Why aren't you studying harder? Why aren't you trying harder? And trying to catch that earlier, so that, parents, because we all want to have good relationships with our kids, right? And that can make for a very challenging homework time.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't part of the reason that we do math and DIMBLES precisely what you just said? Because we do it starting in kindergarten, and when students fall behind, you can see it early on, right?
Correct. I think one of the things that our district is working on getting better at is that using that, understanding that data, interpreting that data, and then having a corrective action with the data. And so that we are seeing, and we have been seeing progress for years, but we want to make sure that it is a joint partnership between general education and special education.
And I think one of the things, having a child that's now in upper elementary school, it has changed significantly on how the district is viewing literacy, the steps that they're taking. The general curriculum change is significant, right? We're stepping away from balanced literacy. It's been significant. I can just say that as a parent. I think it'd be really helpful also to look, I know the committee and the administration are evaluating math curriculum as well, and to look at that same lens and what would be most accessible to students with disabilities as well. I think that would be really helpful. And how would that, translate? That would be something that we'd be quite interested in talking about further.
There's a hint up there to that, right? If you look at ELA, science, math, in ELA and science, we're improving a little bit, at least, between the lower grades and the upper, but in math we're going the wrong way. So that kind of supports what you just said, right? That we're something's odd about that, right?
Yeah, and I think that it's curriculum, it's professional development, all the things that I think Pam and Lynn know. I don't have to to talk about them, but I think that's helpful, and the numbers do show that.
Could I ask you, when what grade was your son in when we got the new curriculum, the reading curriculum?
Wit and Wisdom was rolled out as a trial for teachers who wanted to opt in when he was in second grade.
So could you see more
No.
faster progress after because of that?
Nope. But every child's different, right?
And I think
Every child's different. So
And
I think
it's also in comparison, it's also in relationship to the early phonics work and that literacy skills. So Wit and Wisdom is a high quality instructional materials, and it provides access of high quality instructional materials to all students. The teaching of reading, right, is the Haggerty and the foundations and the small group instruction of the actual teaching of reading skills. It's also part of Wit and Wisdom, but Wit and Wisdom
is the next piece.
Correct.
Yep.
So when did they come, Pam?
So I think 3 years ago is when the district, so I think we're in the 4 years, so it's like 3 years ago is when the district had Haggerty and foundations. I don't really know exactly when foundations, because it was here when I was here, and then it left for a little while, and then it came back, but it was about 3 years ago when they started with really knowing that they needed to move away from balanced literacy and bringing back, just what I said, Haggerty for phonemic awareness, DIBELS, and then the MAP testing. And then last year we took a look at what data meetings were looking like, how we might need to refine data meetings, and helping our teachers to interpret. There's a lot of data that they're receiving, and giving them the tools. And then what we wanted to really do is just what we talked about a few minutes ago, is make sure that the materials and the way that we're teaching students matches, if it makes sense for the student, and the tier 1 and the tier 2 instruction. And so students aren't learning something in tier 2 and then it doesn't seem to match what they're learning in tier 1, and we're really just confusing the child.
My kids, when they started in kindergarten, they had always had foundations. They're in 7th grade now.
Okay.
I believe the Haggerty piece was introduced in ABAC 2021 or so, maybe 21, 22, like just a few years ago.
I think our daughters have it.
And then
That was
my kids did Wit and Wisdom in their 5th grade year, so 2 years ago.
So when they got the Haggerty, did you see faster progress?
My kids didn't have
before?
that. That was after they were already in 3rd grade.
So I think maybe perhaps, Pam, some of the feedback, I'm just assuming that maybe the parents who came to speak to you during those office hours are, I think, perhaps parents who their children didn't get the same experience, that I think that we're seeing the children going into the ABEC now are getting, which is an amazing step for our district. I think it is a really positive thing, but there is a gap of children who those foundational skills just weren't there, and so they, are having trouble or whatever it is. So that would be my observed experience, but I am not either of you. So, all right, let's keep going, please.
All right, so what were we busy doing, us 5 moms in the last year? So one of our big messages from last year was we wanted to get more involved within the community to understand how to better serve our families. So what we did was we facilitated a support group. This support group was open to actually everyone in the Merrimack Valley. So going back to Kelly's question, this was open to not only North Andover residents, but all within the Merrimack Valley and north of Boston area. And this was great because not only were we able to understand their needs better, but we were able to connect families. So families were networking with each other who otherwise may be isolated, who don't get some of the community events or don't get to be involved in those events due to their child's disability. So this gave them a chance to make a community and make a network within these support groups. While sharing strategies, they also shared phone numbers and became friends, which was really wonderful to see. The North Andover Special Olympics, for those of you that don't know, Kara Higgins, a wonderful, wonderful woman here in North Andover who is also a former educator, ran the Special Olympics solely on her own in the last 10 years for both districts. She really was the one coordinating. She rightfully so has now officially retired, and we did not want to see this program go away. It is run by a volunteer for these 2 districts. So I partnered with Kara last year so I could learn the ropes from her. We then, as a CPAC board, decided that we wanted to take this on. So myself and Zora and 2 board members from Andover CPAC are now kind of captain chairs of the Special Olympics, and we are keeping it going forward because it means a lot to the families and it's a great community event. It's going to be June 3rd this year at Andover High School. I urge all of you, if you're able to attend, please come out. See how these families interact with one another, see the joy these athletes get out of being there. It really is a wonderful day, and we're very happy to do it. We also were able to rally in donations from local businesses. So for Special Olympics, Whole Foods of Andover, tremendous partner. Fresh produce for our athletes and the teachers and educators, waters, cereal bars. People really rallied behind it, and this year we're only growing in terms of donations. Also for donations, we were able as a CPAC to privately raise enough money to buy each school in North Andover a AAC, an augmentative communication board, for every school within the district to have in their outdoor play area, which is huge because as a mother, which I've shared with you all before, of 2 non-speaking children, this is their lifeline to communication because they cannot verbally speak the neurotypical way. This is how they communicate with their friends, with their educators, and even those who may have delayed speech. This is helpful for all of our kids out there to be able to access communication. We were able to have a wonderful presentation from Early Birds with Sharon Amos and her partnership with Zora Warren. We had a great turnout for that. I want to say it was attended by over 50 parents. Really was a great look into literacy evaluation, different tools and applications to use. We had a teacher appreciation where, again, we had donations from Wegmans Food Markets. We went around to each school and left produce, cereal bars, waters in all of our teachers' break rooms to show our appreciation for what our educators do.
We also gave them swag, which is very important.
Always got to have merch.
the CPAC logo.
We also had a wonderful presentation with Sarah Ward on executive functioning, the neuropsychologist presentation, which focused on anxiety in relation to disabilities. Rachel Anastasia, gave a really wonderful presentation on the new IEP. She's actually going to be offering it again to anyone who missed it, to all of our families. And this was virtual, so easy to attend after school hours. Help me with the date on the rollout again with that.
It's next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll see that coming out. So that was some of our highlights from the last year. Impressive. Thank you. We worked, and I am going to give a shout out to the women that I serve on this board with because we are all women with full-time jobs and families. This is strictly volunteer. And everyone that you saw their faces in the beginning gives their heart and soul to this community every single day on top of their families. So I do want to show my appreciation for those people. What do we have coming up this year? One of the things that you'll see on there is we're going to have our CPAC Awareness Day on Friday, November 15th. Coupled with that is our new merchandise, which Rachel Bedard from Be Designed so graciously has partnered with us again to give us 25% back of the profits of the merchandise sold. We have some new merch up this year. Our theme is going to be our inclusion era. We are in our inclusion era. It is a theme because it is very important in all that we do from both an educational and personal standpoint. One of the things that we're going to offer during the CPAC Awareness Week is on Monday, you'll notice Monday, November 18th, Chris Marchese, who has a wonderful dual role between the Department of Developmental Services and the Northeast ARC. He's the Community Resource Specialist. He's going to do a virtual info session with our families to talk about everything from transition planning and resources to consultations to community programming. They just opened a new Merrimack Valley Family Welcome Center in Lawrence. He's going to go through all of those services and also answer questions for our parents. We're going to be following up with this later with Andrea Morris, who's the Director of Family Supports from DDS in our local area. And Andrea is a wonderful resource for our parents because she's able to answer those questions that I feel like Pam and Lynn often get about next steps in transition planning, so 18 to 22, DDS waivers and grants, when we talk about how to financially support our families. She is a wonderful resource when it comes to insurance questions, what's covered, neuropsych evaluations. We utilize Andrea very much, and I'm very appreciative that she's going to come and speak to our families. So doing these things are really important to our families. Why? Because this is where you see some of the issues at the IEP table. Some of the confusion, some of the disappointment and frustration. This is to empower them, to help them get the questions answered, to educate and support. And it builds into our long-term plan of how do we help them become better advocates for their family and for their child. For winter and spring, we also may have Linda Murphy. If any of you have ever read Linda Murphy's books, she's an SLP who owns Peer Projects from the Heart in Beverly. She wrote a wonderful book on declarative language and another on co-regulation. So when we talk about how to deal with a child who's having big emotional behaviors, trouble with transitioning, these are the things that Linda really speaks to and helps really guide the parent and coach the parent in a way that is supportive and also helps to look at the child holistically. So we're looking forward to these presentations from them. Anything else?
No,
I think we covered majority of what you're going to see us
lot
working
of
on
stuff.
from webinars and series for next year.
And I think the only other note is just kind of this multi-part parent education series, which you talked a little bit about too. We came to last year with, the real desire to have a rights law presentation. We understand that we're not in a financial position to request funds from the district at this time, but last year, we presented in January. In January, we were potentially not in that position that we were aware of. So, I think this is our intent is to educate parents in the same way and potentially use our resources and community ties to bring in people that could piece together some of those topics, and they're very highly qualified to speak about them. And that's the intent with kind of a multi-part parent education series.
Can you just, while you have the microphone, can you just tell parents who may not already be connected with CPAC how they can find out the information? What page do they need to follow? What do they need to do?
Absolutely. So we have a Facebook page, so North Andover CPAC Facebook page. All of our meetings, all of our events, they will be created as events with Google Meet links in the event directly in Facebook. So you can see a Facebook event is actually created, so you can just click on it. If you don't have Facebook, you can also email us, hello@northandovercpac.com. That's a great way to get in touch with us and to ask, hey, can I get that link? We also, we were a bit delayed in our launch, but we will soon be launching a fully accessible North Andover CPAC webpage. That page, we are also looking to be able to connect that, so you don't necessarily have to, I think, our wonderful social media expert is not here, but you'd be able to just see that and just click on it. And so the calendar would be available on our website as well.
Also, please check your building principals newsletters.
Yes.
All building principals have been lovely to work with and partner with to put out any of our events or communications. So please also check whatever newsletters you're getting from your building principals for updates, which will have the registration links for events as well.
I'd like to say on that slide, though, I see down there you have a proposed topic for 504 plans. I find that so many parents don't know what a
Yes.
504 is. So I love that you have that on there for parents. I think that would be a really great presentation.
I think for us too, it's a group of parents that may not think, oh, my child's maybe not disabled enough to join CPAC or to talk about, or maybe I don't want anyone to know about what's going on with my child. And I think we really want to kind of get rid of that stigma, right? CPAC is for everyone. And so we'd love for families that maybe could use some support or some camaraderie and community to perhaps that be an entry point for them as well. And we're really lucky. Holly, who is a former school committee member, she does our basic rights presentation every year. So if you're unaware, the district does pay for our membership into the Federation for Children with Special Needs, which is we're very grateful for. Part of that is you get one presentation as part of your membership a year. Because Holly offers to do that basic rights presentation for us, which the district is required to do, we can then use that for something else. So we're really fortunate to be able to do that. So that's also our proposed topic is the one we'd like to choose. We have to coordinate with the Federation, but if that's possible, then it's possible because of Holly.
Amazing.
May I ask a suggestion, one thing?
Absolutely.
Can you go back to that other slide? In the series, the part 1, part 2, part 3, I think one of the things I've struggled with as a parent, I feel like I can do some of those things. It's then the annual meeting with the progress report that you get and what that means and like the ongoing information you get about your student on IEP. It's like, it's not just that you finally get an IEP and then we're good. It's
Right.
like, there's other things that happen. I feel like that's where I was not ready to do anything with for my child.
I think that's a really good point. Maybe that's something that we can coordinate with you, Lynn, and maybe even with Pam too or Kristen. What measures North Andover uses that's non-standardized data and how to kind of monitor that over time, especially if your child has a disability and you're going to see them in the red in some of these things. What does that mean? And how important is that data perhaps compared to other data that your child's special educator is tracking, and kind of how to interpret that might be a great topic.
Yeah, great.
That came up at office hours as well. Parents,
Yeah, like,
other parents
we got
asked that same
thing in,
question.
so now what?
Right. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
They're doing what for their goals? What?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to share that the partnership that we have with the Essex County Learning Community, well, it's late, good, my ECLC, yes, ECLC has been really beneficial to us. So tomorrow they are offering an IEP training for special educators by Aled Bloom, and we have a significant amount of our special educators that are going to the training tomorrow. Principals are a little nervous because we're sending so many, but I said it's one day, and I think that they're gonna hear a lot. But this is a training that, because we applied to and became part of this this group, it's a free training for our educators. So we have a significant amount going tomorrow, and we're thrilled about that.
Is that the same training that was offered last spring as well?
So Allen Bloom was offered in the district, but wasn't offered to all of our educators. So there was a few educators who were sort of like train the trainer model, and that's great. But he's an expert, and being able to hear from him and being able to get him in front of more of our special education teachers, we feel is beneficial. So we're sending, and then we've also, one of the benefits is, this community will also work with us if we're trying to bring something in district. So if we need to bring him back, perhaps maybe partnering, and what's nice is we could maybe partner with another town that might need some, and so it becomes a little bit less expensive. But we're really thrilled that we have a lot going tomorrow.
That's great. Okay. All right. So our current financial position, we currently have available funds of about $1,800. So we hope that changes with our fall fundraiser. It usually does. And then our intent is to also do a winter fundraiser and a spring fundraiser. One of our biggest hurdles, I don't remember, could you go to the next slide? Okay. Areas of opportunity. The first one is critical to our bank balance, is that we need additional collaboration and support from the district to allow North Andover CPAC to fundraise to best serve families. So we came to you for financial support last year. We understand that we have to be team players in the community for this year and perhaps subsequent years. And for us, that means we understand we're not coming to you for a direct funding request, but we need to be able to be supported by the municipality to raise funds. One of our biggest deterrents to doing that was historically conversations surrounding if we can raise funds as part of, as a subset of the district, right? Using your tax ID number, essentially, right? We have actually worked with the town accountant to work through that. We do have a meeting with the town accountant and town council coming up to talk a bit about town council's prior legal opinion about CPAC. And one of the things that's really important to us and I think critical to fundraising efforts is our ability to take funds on our website and online, like digitally, right? So that is also something that we are working with the town accountant on, and my understanding is that it's now just kind of an IT function. So the district has historically used Square, and as long as we are compliant with municipal finance law, which we would be, and that will all be discussed and clearly outlined, then we can use Square as a mechanism to take those funds. It's handled solely by someone else, squarely by someone else, not by us, right? So there's no concern, and that is very helpful. It is really challenging to have a fundraiser with cash.
So you don't need our permission for that, do you?
No.
But basically, you're going to use a town software base? Or through the town website?
No, we have our own website, and I don't know how that will function. We haven't quite worked that out, but it has been a long journey to get here. We have been looking for guidance on this for a year and a half, and it frankly made it almost impossible and frustrating to be able to fundraise last spring.
Do you need help? Well, I mean, one form of help is our mailing list. I'm not sure what the law says about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's more just support that as long as we are in compliance with municipal finance law and we are appropriately going through the appropriate channels and in the appropriate standard operating procedures, that this is something the school committee I hope would be excited about, right? Yeah. And then additionally, when we are not in a budgetary crisis, frankly, that the district has open conversations about what funding CPAC looks like. We last year discussed with the former executive director of special education, at a minimum, our operating costs be covered. It's about $2,000 a year, give or take. And frankly, my understanding is that's not a possibility. So we now not only are covering our operating costs, which means emails, website, things of that nature, we're now also fundraising for programming in the district that parents desperately need. And so, anything that we can do collaboratively to make the fundraising efforts of a volunteer board more effective and easy is really helpful.
Because what you saw on the last slide, going back to 23-24 year and 24-25 comes off of our connections and networking, to be quite honest with you. All of that programming you saw, a majority and fundraising included, was through the 5 women in our connections to the various organizations that we support. So it's a lot to keep that going when we keep going back to the well to ask, can you do this, can you do that for us for no cost? While it's helpful to our families and they understand that and are happy to do it, we do have to be mindful as we go on here in the next coming years that we're not always going to get the yes.
These are professionals that, that their services are valuable, and many of them do it because they love to do it and they understand the organization, but it is something we're going to continue to need to be mindful of. And we're open to suggestions and conversation around that. Again, last year we came with a full budget and a sources and uses. We're not doing that, and we are keenly aware of the situation, but I also think we've all learned that frank discussions are important, so this is us having one.
this is just like a wondering in terms of the mechanics of how to make that happen, because we have other parts of the school department doing fundraising. Money goes into student activities account. I'm wondering, because this is an advisory committee to the school committee, that if you do fundraising, do we then officially have to accept it, and then do we just have to set a mechanism up for that to do it
So there's
periodically?
a meeting already set up to start
Okay.
to talk about that.
So that was just the thing that popped in my head, is like there's probably
Right,
some
so the
different
new
rules we have to
CFO
follow.
The new CFO for the town and the town accountant have been and town council have been and town manager have been very receptive to trying to make the process a little
Yeah.
bit easier for a variety of things, for both CPAC and, I'll be honest, for our budgeting issues as well. So I think that meeting set up, so hopefully after that, after you have that, if there are still things that you're feeling like that you're stuck or not working, then certainly, but I do think that the path is towards making it easier for you to be able to fundraise. And then I think long-range goals, I think sort of having that conversation about what are presentations you'd like to see for parents, and then how can the district support, and same in terms of like, it probably goes hand in hand with a lot of the initiatives that we're doing. So sort of that planning in advance for things that we want to be able to do together, and how we're going to fund for those things.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, we've been pretty vocal about a rights law presentation or something similar. I think that's like the gold standard potentially, but really whatever we can do to make our families feel like they're equal participants at the table in a team meeting, I think is really critical. And that's the feedback we heard in our parent surveys that we performed last year. That's the feedback we continue to hear. To share, which we haven't, we get messages on Facebook and emails weekly, where we are taking those messages, providing guidance. We are very clear that we are not members of their team, nor are we, advocates. That's not our role, but saying, here's the resources, here's generally what your next step is, and here's who you should contact in the district. Those are things that are, I think, really critical. Parents are feeling, I think, a bit lost. And Lynn has been, to be clear, very supportive and communicative. It's been wonderful to have that, an interim director that we can communicate with. It's been really, really great. But that is the continued feedback we've received since I joined as a board member a couple of years ago. So I just think that continues to be the theme, and something that we, I don't know that changes until we do some serious thought and programming around it together. And we're happy to do that.
Is there an FAQ or something of that nature anywhere that parents could go to, like either that we maintain on district website or
You get a packet of your rights and responsibilities, but it's a
doozy.
Yeah.
We've talked to Lynn about it. So there's a lot on everyone's plate right now. In admin.
We get really excited about stuff. We add about 50 more things to our list.
Yeah.
So that is, there's a couple things that we've been talking about and working on. One is kind of a flow chart of who you contact and when. That's, I think, very helpful. That's something that's, I think, in process. Frequently asked questions are good. A lot of the questions, I think, sometimes are too individualized.
I was going to say,
That's
level of need, level of support also is going to impact that.
Right. I was just thinking out loud, like,
Yeah,
sort of, like
absolutely.
if I were encountering this for the first time, what
Yep.
would I want to do? And the first thing I'd be is like, I'm totally lost. Help me, right? So like at least a first level.
And it also
sheet.
depends. Are you really lost because you just got your kids dibbles and they're in the red? Well, that's, or is it because they just got
Right.
diagnosed with autism, or is it because, so it's a bit challenging.
Okay.
I'm sure we could come up with something.
I'm just thinking it's pretty easy, relative terms, right, to post a page for us, right? If it were, if there was a useful one to post, that's all.
And maybe we can talk about that. And yeah. Do you want to skip? So another in this, I'm going to skip around because in the same kind of topic, we brought this up last year, so we kept it on the slide, is just really thinking about that parent empowerment feeling an equal on the table, what does that look like in the future? And something we thought about is there any way that, you know, we can facilitate or provide support and guidance from independent professionals? So sometimes if a parent feels stuck, they may not have the resources to hire a private advocate or educational consultant. There maybe is, for whatever reason, could be the fault of the districts or not the fault of the districts, some level of mistrust, and they don't know where to go. And so is there some mechanism, and I don't know what that looks like, and I think perhaps the Special Education Committee can talk about that, the review committee, but is there some way to provide additional support, some mechanism? And that goes back to feeling empowered. So those are some of the things we kept up there, but we have a lot more to talk about.
I gotta hit on school. I have to hit on school safety discussions because I think it's good to talk about this. With the way the world is now and with Alice drills and such, it's really important that each of our buildings and the NAPD know where the special education classrooms are. And I'm specifically speaking to sub-separate classrooms where you will find children like my own who do not take direction, meaning James, don't run towards a dangerous, name it, fire, could be anything, right? Or may not even understand to be quiet in a term of, or go hide. How do we assist these teachers and these paras with getting these children out of the classroom? When I say children, I also mean high schoolers. That does NAPD know where these classrooms are? How are the paras and teachers supported in getting them out of the building? Do they know how to safely carry them over the shoulders if they have to be carried? These are things that when I recently questioned the resource officers and those in the building, it sparked this bigger conversation that no, we may not be addressing these issues. And they were very quick to respond. The resource officer came to the building, met with the sub-separate teachers. There are these trainings now in place for the staff. It's all really wonderful things, but we need, I think, to address it on a larger level to make sure each building, each teacher is prepared and knows how to safely take these children out of the building in the risk of such a tragedy. So that is something that was very near and dear to my heart. And that goes also back to when we talk about responsiveness and what we've seen from the building principals and such. And Karen Bakovich, who is now at the ABECC as a special ed coordinator, has been very receptive to the talk about inclusion. And this is more of like an ACEs conversation that we'll have as we go into how we're going to kind of look at our programming and our classrooms. But Lynn was kind enough to set up a tour of the Doyle School in Wakefield for Karen and I, just to see how are other programs doing it, how are other classrooms doing integration and inclusion. And so that has been a great conversation that is ongoing. And I hope that we keep having that conversation in all of our buildings about what the true meaning of inclusion is. We have the raised values, and that's wonderful, and we put on these assemblies, but how are we executing on the day-to-day? How are we making sure that these members of community have just as much interaction as our neurotypical peers do with each other? So I think that that's something that's, again, something that a continuous topic throughout both inside the school and with the administrators.
And that's why our theme for CPAC Awareness Month and then our CPAC Awareness Day is we're in our inclusion era. So we hope to kind of also spark maybe some ideas for educators and for principals to talk what is inclusion to children during that week. You know, what does that mean? What does that look like? Your shirt's really cool, but what does that word mean?
And we have some really wonderful, passionate teachers. Chelsea Frolic, Kim Angelo, and again, I'm just naming ABECC because that happens to be my exposure. Mm-hmm. But these teachers are truly being very progressive with their mindset. They want to do it. They're very headstrong about it. And now having the support of a Karen in the building and people who want to have the conversations, there's change happening. And I think we're off to a good start. And people are taking accountability. And I love to hear, like even what Pam said, yeah, we don't want to be compared to the state. We have things to fix. I appreciate that you at least acknowledge we have things to fix.
To build off what you were just saying, inclusion isn't just good for our kids who are on an IEP or have 504, it's good for our kids, all of our kids. Mm-hmm. It's just better for everybody. And I'm just thinking about school safety. I had a student, and when I was in Lawrence, and I was on the 3rd floor, and she was a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, and when we had a fire drill, I needed to then learn where she went because couldn't use the elevators, and I'm up on the 3rd floor, and like, so what does it mean to keep in that moment that student safe and where they go so that they get the treatment that they need, and like making sure that all teachers who have students who have those type of medical needs are ready to react appropriately.
And maybe that even informs classroom placements too next year, right?
Yeah.
Is there a place where access is easier and it's in an emergency, it's a better location for those students?
I was lucky we had an official area of refuge right outside my classroom.
Wonderful.
With an extra special fire rated door, so it was quite fun.
Perfect.
But it was like, but I had to learn what that meant.
Yeah.
Right.
I've met with Chief Ware. We've had these kinds of discussions, and much like Mr. Hicks, I've had experience doing this as a building principal, and so that the discussions are in place. We have some time set up for the school committee to meet with both the Chief Ware and Chief Gray, to talk about safety concerns. So and they actually just, with the town manager, sent me an email saying, what are some of the things? So I just wrote myself a note to make sure putting this down, because that's really important that you have the area of refuge, how you're going to transport if the elevator's not working, how do we know how to lift, so that, and also so that our staff understands the Good Samaritan law, if there is an issue, and what their rights are as well, and their protection in terms of getting students out of the building. Absolutely. And how we can help our students. But yeah, they're really great things to awareness, and I appreciate that you brought that up to us again.
And we appreciate the responsiveness, and I think we appreciate the administration working collaboratively with us. It doesn't happen in every community, and we're really grateful for that, and grateful for the school committee support. I think, we also want to talk a bit about the committee that is being formed. I think that you, as a committee, are discussing tonight. A couple of the members of CPAC worked on and reviewed some of what you'll be voting on tonight, and you have our full support. We are really excited to get started. It's been a long time coming, and we hope that we can speed up the process for this committee. Any questions? Other questions? We're good? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Okay. North Andover Middle School building updates.
Yes. I have to go to my notes because I wrote them down. We had a meeting the other day. We don't have as many meetings now because things are wrapping up. But okay, so big news is lots of things happening in our auditorium, including the curtain and a new lift being installed, and new rigging for lights, a new lighting system, and it's fantastic. Right now, we are looking at, I can't believe it's 5 weeks away, a completion date, a soft completion date of 12/18 before winter break, with some punch list items over break, and hopefully a just after the school New Year completion done. The lift in the auditorium is going to start on 12/2 to get installed. The installer for that is very picky in terms of they have to come in and verify that you've done all the things that could possibly need to be done before they even get on site to install the lift. We have the lift there, and we have all the things getting to be done, and they're scheduled for 11/2 for that, to make sure that we have stage access. So at the beginning of any building project, your goal is to be on time and on budget, never be late or over. And right now, it's looking like we are going to be slightly early and under. And I think right now, if it were to end, we might still have some change orders. We might have still some things pop up, knock on wood. But right now, we'll have in the contingency fund a remainder amount of $350,000, which could then go back to the town for other building projects, which is really great. But I like early and cheaper. That's always good. It's very good.
Thank you. Kittredge.
Okay, it's starting to kick into gear here. Just to give everybody kind of an overview of the high-level schedule, we're in the feasibility study year, April 24 to April 2025. As everybody knows, we submitted our preliminary development plan back in August. The next step is the preliminary schematic review, PSR. That's going to be submitted in February 25, and then the MSBA approval we anticipate would be in May 25. So then there's a period between May and December of 25 where we do the actual schematic design, meaning what's going to be in the building, and then project funding gets into gear in the early part of May of 26, between January and May. And I have a graphic. I don't know if you want to see that. It's probably more detailed than this meeting needs. But, there's, basically the target would be a vote at NA town meeting in May of 2026 to fully fund it. And just to remind everybody, the whole idea of this program is to split it with essentially split it with the state, right? That's why we're going at a little bit slower pace than we might otherwise do if we were doing the entire thing ourselves. But the idea is we'll save the community a lot of money by getting a lot of state funding for this. So that's why we're.
Percentage.
What's that?
What's our percentage?
It's less than our percentage is.
Well, whichever I can subtract.
Yeah, I mean, there are
something
numerous
from
combinations under
No,
discussion,
but normally the better off the community, the lower the percentage of state funding.
right. But this is we're looking at pretty significant. Like this is off the top of my head, but it's going to like a 40% assistance, so 60% cost to us, and
So-
there's a lot of delta in there, right?
Can I just ask quickly, because it's new to me, like in a couple paragraphs, what is it that we're doing to the Kittredge School?
So
And why are we doing it?
Building a new one.
well,
Building it, well,
to be completely accurate, right? The study is in order to get MSBA assistance, right? We have to go through a study where we show, well, what if we just change part of it? What if we, just do a bigger part of it? What if we knock the whole thing down and start over?
so can we
there
go
are
back
6
to
different-
there's something wrong with it, right? There's some
Oh,
reason that
sorry.
we need to do something.
Yes, sorry. So the building was built, now I get you where you're going. Building was built in 1949. It is not ADA compliant even slightly. It's falling apart, to be blunt.
We have very inadequate teaching spaces.
Yes.
For all children in the building. The building it's old and it's time for to do some renovations to the building. We were accepted in the MSBA project because we could show that it was not meeting the needs of our students.
Right. They're, to be blunt, the Kittredge, now they've done a wonderful job over the years. My 3 kids all went through there, but it's making do with very little, right? Pull out things happen in the hallway.
Closets have been turned into
Yeah.
teaching spaces. It's just not meeting the educational needs of our students.
Better way to put it, more sophisticated
So-
way to put it.
Maybe this is more a question for the superintendent. You said at one of the previous meetings that our enrollment's declining. So we may not need as much space sometime or other as we have now, and so we may not want to fix up all of the schools to house students we don't have, and I guess I'm just curious how this
Right,
fits
so we
in
need to
that.
look at master plan 2, and that's, I think, a 17-year plan, as we all know. And so we need to look at some of the plans that we had for some of our other schools. So, Franklin School's an older school. I was principal there, so it must be wicked old. And then Atkinson School, but there may be some things that we don't need to do, some things that we still need to do, but we do need to look at those plans, and that also shifts some of the funding because Kittredge was part of the master plan, and now that we're part of MSBA. But we definitely need a new Kittredge school, and we need to be able to program for our students that are there.
I guess my question was, and I'm happy to accept your guidance on this, that thinking about all of these needs in an area of somewhat declining enrollment, you still want this project, understanding that maybe some others need to be rethought. Is that a fair
Correct. We
summary?
want this project, and some others may need to be rethought. And then as we look at what our enrollment might be, and this project most likely, and maybe even before the project is finished, looking at are our district lines correct? Are we, and I hate to say the word redistricting because that makes people nervous, but I did just say it, but we're not doing it, so don't storm my office tomorrow. But looking at those district lines and making sure that we're sort of using the capacity of each of our buildings. And then there's other things to think about in our district in terms of, if there's space, that we could use for other projects. We know that the ABECC is out of space.
Already? Yes.
Can we just put a couple more
I don't think
attach a
so.
couple more? Mr. Brown, maybe you'll know, I'm Superintendent Lathrop. How many classes are currently at Kittredge, and how many did they approve us to put back into Kittredge in the new one?
So the current one is two per grade, I believe, right? Approximately.
Approximately.
So it's
Yeah, and-
10 or 12 classrooms right
But
now?
it's going to be 3 per
But the
grade.
plan is to go to 3.
So it'll have a little bit more capacity
Yep.
to give us some flexibility, but not overdoing it so we have wasted space.
Correct.
Correct.
And laid out in a intelligent fashion so that.
I think
yeah.
Mr. Brown's probably going to get to it, but it's also on the screen. There is an
Yeah.
opportunity for the community to come and share some thoughts about the new or renovated school project. So, and at that time, will they share some thoughts?
About,
Yes.
about the potential directions we
Correct.
could go, right, that we're evaluating, right?
Right.
We're evaluating, I think, six different alternatives, some of which are just renovations versus total new construction.
But in general, I think schools with 3 teachers per grade are better than schools with 2 teachers per grade, so that makes sense. But if enrollment's declining, it says we're actually going to put more students in this school. So
Right,
that-
they may be shifted from other schools.
Well,
Right.
but, just in capital planning, it would mean some schools that we might think we need to renovate. You see what I'm getting at? We
Yes.
don't want to build space that we're not going to need.
I think, yes, of course, but I think one of the problems here, or one of the challenges here is it's a moving target, right? And then just because enrollment's declining the last 2 years doesn't mean it will forever, right? That's another possibility. And you have to, well, I guess I should also mention, some of the things being considered here are also its utility for the town, beyond just use as a school, right? That gets into the planning as well, right? What community things can happen there.
Right, but we keep talking about how tight our budget is, so I understand we don't build schools out of current funds, but we pay the debt service on them, unless we get an override.
Well, if
And
there's
even
debt,
then.
you're still paying for it, yeah. Right.
Well,
So.
Right, you're paying for it within a ceiling that goes up every year by less than the cost of what we did the year before. The town, Prop 2.5. Designed so that every single public entity is eventually underfunded.
Anyway, to finish up my report, if I may,
Sorry.
yeah, that's right. So just briefly, the current activity, the small group meetings going on with mostly the building stakeholders, leading up to the December 4th community meeting that the superintendent just told us about. And then our building subcommittee selects the preferred alternative in late January so the PSR can be ready by February. So that's the current activity. That's it.
Thank you. All right. We are moving on. We don't have any presentations. We're on to continued business. And if it is okay with the committee, I'd like to take things a little bit out of order on continued business, just because we do have CPAC here. I'd like to take the advisory committee on special education first. If there's no objection? Okay. All right. So as you see, we have the guidelines that we have been working on. There are some red lines in there. These red lines are feedback that I have received from committee members and that the e-board of CPAC has also contributed to, so that we need to review to decide what we want to keep in and what we don't for our finalized version. So if you want to take a look.
So, Madam Chair, do you want us to take as a starting point what's in black or everything? That is, should we move to put them in or move to take them out?
So what we're looking at specifically, I think what in black is what we are looking at. I don't think there's been any objection to what is in black. I think specifically we're looking to what has been changed to what is in red.
But we haven't voted on anything yet, right?
Correct.
So we could put in a motion either to vote for it with the pink or without.
That's what we're going to be discussing now, is what we want to change and what we don't.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we're looking, so what I'm assuming, since what is in black and is not changed, those are the things that I have not gotten any feedback on. I'm assuming nobody has any objections to those. And I could be wrong. If you're looking at it and something comes up, we're in discussion session right now.
Well, to the extent that I've read the purple ones, I would leave them in. but everybody else needs to say
So,
what they would do.
Yeah, looking first, we're looking under an assignment, specifically under number 3. It was added and included but not limited to services, service delivery, access to the general education curriculum, the relationship between special education, general education, IEP development, programs, policies, professional development, staffing, and operational structures.
Beautiful.
It seems consistent, it just makes sense, and it's consistent with the Urban Collaborative Report.
It just gives more detail to the.
Oh, the red
special
lines aren't
education.
showing,
Yeah, they
are
were
not
in the
linked
agenda. Yeah.
on the agenda. The red lines are only in the packet. Okay.
Well,
Does anyone have the electronic of that?
do you want a motion on each one, or do you want to go
No.
through them all? in
Nope, we're just
parallel?
gonna go through them.
Okay.
And then we'll do the whole thing as revised. So we're good on that one?
Yes.
No,
We're working
No,
on
it's
getting
not
it
in
up.
there.
No, I'm sorry, but that is the finalized language.
no,
No.
That's the old version.
that's the old version.
What we have in our packet here, but it's not up there, has the red lines.
Right. I think so. Well, yeah, because she printed it.
It's only 9 o'clock. Come on.
All right. So okay, I think we're good with that change going down. I think the next red line was just clarifying, putting in 3 members or parents of guardians of North Andover students. I think we want to be very specific that we want community members that are part of North Andover.
And just a quick, as that continues, it says who have IEPs, and that's, it struck out receiving special education services. So this, does this mean that they have to be parents, their students have to have IEPs, not 504s? Was that intentional, or are we excluding 504s on purpose? Or
We
was that-
could include 5.
Just in general,
Please, no.
But students with 504s are not considered to be receiving special education. So regardless, if you, however you
Either way
frame
word.
it would exclude 504s.
Okay.
Okay, good.
And
job.
whether or not that was the intention or not, I'm not sure, but I'm just
Yep.
saying
That would be
that that
same.
language
It's not gonna fall under
it's
that.
the same.
The
Correct.
servicing of a 504 doesn't come under the special education.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so this just makes it clearer.
Yeah, so it'd
It means
be
the same, but
As
more
part of the
explicit.
committee composition, at least 3 members who are parents or guardians of North Andover students who have IEPs.
And just to connect with our conversation earlier, they could be North Andover students who have IEPs who attend St. Michael's or attend a different school, and they could be members of this?
As long as the parents and or guardians are North Andover residents.
Doesn't matter, they could go to a different school as long as they have
Correct.
IEPs. Okay.
Correct.
And that's the intent, and I just want to make sure that's the intent of this?
That's,
Okay.
frankly, it might
that
be-
is the intent.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'd be important to have a parent who has a student who might be in out-of-district placement.
Okay.
On this.
Oh, I see. Well, but if they're on an IEP, then that would still count.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh,
but we
so-
want
so
the parent or guardian.
The new language is a little clearer.
Yes.
Yes.
Good, okay.
I guess I have a comment, but I don't really want to change it.
Okay.
But I think for people to just hear, right? Like, oh, you did change it. Never mind. I was going to say, I don't like I wanted to strongly urge the special education director to be on this committee,
Somebody has
not a
beat-
designee.
Yeah, yep, that's
Somebody's
changed.
beat you to
Somebody
it.
beat me
We
to
took
it.
off
Yeah.
or designee.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then we took out from the district special education department. So yeah, so it's going to be the special education director.
Period. Yeah,
Period.
perfect.
And then adding in the assistant superintendent of teaching and learning.
Because that's what our title is, correct?
That is the title. Yes.
Thank you.
We took out
Liaison.
liaisons for school committees. We went 1 to 2 members of the school committee to serve. Resources provided. I think this is the one that had the most input. And I think this is one, Ms. O'Neill and Ms. Lathrop too, if you wanted chime in on this too, on what, because there's probably some district guidelines on this as well.
Go back to the agenda and refresh.
So, of course, the advisory council is going to need access to the urban collaborative review, including all data, data resources, documents, and information that the urban collaborative assessed to conduct their review. I think that's important, that all that data that they used be accessible.
Could I make a suggestion about
Yeah.
that?
Mm-hmm.
The committee should have access to analysis of individual student data, but not to the individual student data itself.
Well, I'm starting with bullet point 1 instead of skipping around.
I think that would be relevant to bullet point number 2. Bullet point 1 is just about the urban collaborative stuff that they
Oh,
used.
all right.
You might have to refresh.
Yeah, okay. You mean what they actually published, not what they looked at.
So what they publish, including the data, resources, documents, and information.
Looked at.
Yes.
We might have
Anything that
other
they
data.
used, anything that Urban Collaborative used
to
to develop their report.
Which, well, I'm just saying it, they could have used, in fact, indeed, they should have used individual student data and aggregated it so that it's then
Wow.
safe to release it.
At this point, I don't know what they used.
I think as long as we all understand that you can't release individual student data, but you absolutely need to have your analysis. The computer looks at it, you look at the summaries, that's all I'm getting at.
I'm sorry, what?
Well, the report's already been released, so we've
Right.
already shared it, it's on website, so whatever is there has already been approved to be released.
Okay, that should solve it.
What about the, I guess, is there, and we have the report released, what about the data and resources that they use to develop that report? I think that's what is being looked at.
You mean like surveys, that data? I mean, they.
Right.
I wouldn't want to, go ahead.
I was going to ask
Can you come up to the microphone, please?
So the intent.
Wait, before you speak into the microphone.
Sasha Weinrich, President of CPAC. Okay, so I think when we were talking about this, the intent was that any of the data that obviously we will not and cannot access individual student data that's identifiable, which I think is what Ed was getting at. We're going to need individual student data to make sense of any of their recommendations. And so that would be, I think, pretty critical and having access to that information. I don't think we can predict right now what that committee will need for access, but I think we generally, or the school committee should generally agree that reasonable access is permitted and anticipated, and there would be no breach of confidentiality, and if there is any issue, we would address it at that time, right? Like any concern, it can be addressed.
Can I answer that?
Please.
So I think that there is a way to get the details of profiles, the details of programming, the details around why we have certain services and structures like we do without giving away individual student information. I think we can, there'll be a way that we can figure out how to get the information that's needed without compromising anybody's privacy or confidentiality.
The particular, one type of data that I'm thinking about is through Edwin, you can get a lot of information that doesn't have student level data, but does have very specific charts and comparisons between students with disabilities and high need students and different racial groups as compared to their counterparts in the state. Like that, we can't get through the regular report card, but I know you can get through Edwin. Like that type of data would be really helpful. And it doesn't include any individual student stuff. It's all aggregated
That's a
or
perfect
disaggregated.
example.
Agri something.
Okay. So do we want to put maybe on resources provided a footnote that identifiable student data is exempt?
Yes.
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 Well, I would, except for one thing, that can't be released, but the committee could certainly say to the administration, we would like such and such analysis of that data.
I don't want
Once it's aggregated.
I'm just going to say right now that, and I'm not exactly sure what you're asking for, but I would never bring any child's data to anybody
Of course not.
here, right?
No,
Okay.
no,
I didn't
that's
know if
what I
you-
said. What I meant to
Right.
say was, here's a question that we would ask, and it would have to, you'd have to go to the individual student records, which of course you weren't going to share with us. But someone in the administration could run various analyses based on that and then summarize it.
Correct,
And
and that's
the
what we're
summary
saying.
could
Correct.
be public.
But we're
Yes.
saying the identifiable student data information will not be provided to the advisory committee.
Yeah, so for in a very example is what is the eligibility criteria in which a student has an IEP? What school do they go to? What grade are they in? Are they there's ways to talk about important
Percentage
things
of
without
disability categories per grade, per school, per, yes, all of those things. And even what does the profile look like for certain programs, and the percentage of students who come with this type of disability versus that type of disability, yet both are appropriate for that program.
and potentially benchmark score, whatever, but it wouldn't be
Yeah.
identifiable by
Okay.
students.
But we are okay with the wording of putting the footnote, identifiable student data is exempt.
I don't think we need it, given what you said here.
I think it's necessary to put in there
I would
for,
put it.
yeah.
Extra.
Well, it's exempt, except it's not exempt from having people in the administration analyze data.
But that's not what it says
But it's
here.
exempt
This
from
is
being
exempt
provided
from
to the
this committee.
advisory committee.
Oh, and in its raw form, yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, access to all relevant documents and resources needed to develop recommendations, including but not limited to program descriptions, curriculum documents, schedules, professional development, et cetera. Any comments on that wording? Good. Staff expertise from the superintendent's office, special education director, and relevant specialists.
Irrelevant specialists, definitely not.
And relevant specialists. And then the last one, collaboration and flexibility to support ACE, as ACE may encounter the need for access to information, expertise, et cetera, that may be unanticipated and not clearly identified at this time. Okay.
Can I make a suggestion just in 5 reporting timeline?
Yes.
I know, sorry, am I skipping? Only because January 2025 is now fast approaching.
True.
And perhaps the committee needs more time to be established and created because you're going to have to then get participants to agree to be part of the committee and then you're going to have to meet.
Mm-hmm. So
And
we
so-
want to try for like March?
Probably that's the beginning of the second
Maybe
quarter.
just say like 3 months after the committee's established, like just to, because we don't know, just whatever that time frame is, whether it's 2 months or 3 months, just, we don't have to come back and change it again.
Well, I think we're voting on it tonight.
Okay. But is the committee going to be, so that makes it established then, it's 3 months from that? Okay,
Mhm.
perfect.
All right. Number 6.
Beautiful.
Public meetings. I think Zora had added that last bullet point. I'm not sure what the intent was.
As in, they should be public meetings, or they should not?
Didn't we say we'd follow open meeting law with
Yeah.
these, even though
Yeah.
they're not legally open meetings? Or,
No, we don't need to follow the open meeting
but we
law.
said we would. When we did an that was one of the things we said, we didn't need to legally, we don't need to with an advisory, if
No,
I'm remembering
I don't
correctly, but we
remember it
said
that
we.
way. I
What
remember-
did my fellow, just let me finish, but we said we
Sorry.
legally don't need to, but that we felt as a committee it was important enough that we followed open meeting laws. Is
No,
that-
I think what
No,
we
I
said-
think we want, because we didn't want to have to, I think the public could attend.
That's what
But
we
no-
said.
it's not the having to post 48 hours in advance and having to record them.
The idea was that all the sessions would be open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
But I
We
thought
did
what-
agree on that,
Yes.
absolutely.
Anyway,
There'll be no private
I'll
meetings.
defer to everybody, but I thought there was that we said we'd do agendas, we would post them.
We can, yes,
that this
and
would
maybe
be-
that, we can also post them, but otherwise,
But
What did-
following, but they,
anybody
we can
else
do those
recollect?
things, but that's not quite open meeting law rules.
Right, right. And I think that's
I
why
don't
we
remember
chose to
now.
go for an advisory committee versus, or advisory council versus a subcommittee.
Yeah.
A
You also-
subcommittee would have had to follow open meeting
Correct.
laws.
Correct, that's
Yeah.
exactly
And
right.
all of them.
Right,
Which
which is
we-
why we decided
Okay.
to do an advisory
All
council.
right, so do we want to define kind of the things that, or do we not want to? Put it in here as the things that we're going to follow, posting the meetings, having agendas, or do we not want to do that?
Meetings shall be open to the public.
Yeah.
Is that just what we want to leave it,
Yes.
that they're open, but that we're not going to hold ourselves
Yeah.
to notes and?
So I'm just going to put that last bullet as meetings open to the public.
Yes, and it is the reason why we, at least in the beginning, when this all began, it's the reason why we wanted to not, why we chose to pursue the advisory subcommittee, which is technically the
Right.
term,
Right.
rather than a subcommittee. Plain old
Advisory
subcommittee.
council
other best
versus
practices of
subcommittee.
We're council? Really?
Yeah.
and communicating
Oh.
out would be
I believe
going
so.
to happen no matter what.
Okay.
No,
But
advisory
those would
committee,
just
you're
be
right.
at the
Yeah.
discretion of the committee, okay.
Yeah, it's confusing because an official subcommittee is called a subcommittee, an advisory subcommittee is called an advisory subcommittee, it's just to make it crazy.
Yeah.
But that's the reason we went in that direction.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So the red bullet right above number 7 should say meetings will be open to the public. Right?
Yes, so I've changed it to meetings shall
Meetings
be
will be open to
open.
the public.
How will those be
To the
announced?
public.
Do we need to, or that we come up to the committee once once they form?
I mean, we could put them on,
We can announce them through here, through
Yeah.
nightly
Okay.
newsletter, through
Yeah.
email, through
On the website.
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 Just as we're talking about making these open to the public, just,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, people know.
Yeah, right. All right, any other comments, changes? We took out, let's see, public statements and press releases must be approved by the school committee prior to release.
I have a question on a topic that's not on here.
Could I
but
just
yes.
ask about that, Alyssa?
Yes.
Does that mean we have to have a vote,
Yes.
or can the chair approve?
No, that needs to be approved by the entire committee.
Okay.
So question, given the number of people, the people who are on here, the committee composition, is there a cost to this group of people meeting? I mean, does this happen during the workday? Is this overtime for some of these people? Is it stipend? Just asking the question, or is this all, if the meeting's in the evening, it's covered, there's no overtime for some of the individuals, or is there? And the question, it's the right thing to do, but is there a cost, and do we have it budgeted? And what's the cost for all these people meeting if it's overtime or a stipend?
That's a topic we hadn't discussed before.
Leave it to me to look for the dollar. There we go.
Fair question.
It is a fair question,
Right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's important. We need to go in knowing, right? If there's gonna be a cost to this, what is it? We need at least to say there's a cost, so there's something else that's gonna have to come off the table to do this, which is so important.
If we're meeting during the day or in the day, during working hours, and we meet in person, we wouldn't need access to space, but if we were to meet in the evening when the building, say here, when the building would be closed, then would we have to pay for custodian overtime?
No, not here. You would, if you're meeting during the day, though, and you have educators on the committee, then the educators would need release time, and so
that
the
would cost
cost
a
would be a
sub.
substitute. If you're meeting during the night time, there's some vague language, the language is challenging in the contract. I'm looking for it right now. There's one piece that
Good
talks.
thing we had those
Yeah,
contracts.
it's good thing. Thank you, Michelle. You're watching. The contract says,
Yeah,
hold on,
we
workday
probably have to
workload.
pay hourly,
19.
right?
No, hold on.
Do we have any retired educators?
No, it's a fair question.
It's a fair question.
That's a fair question.
Do we want to change this where it's retired? I mean,
Or at least make that an option.
we make this an option. And they also don't
Some
say
great
these are
ones.
North Andover educators either. So maybe that's something in our composition we want to clarify, but yeah.
It's not on page 19. So there's this part in the contract that says that being part of committees is part of a teacher's duty. There's another part in the contract that says if a teacher participates in a committee outside of the school day, then they're entitled to a stipend for that. I mean, this is a school committee advisory. I don't know if you want to say a volunteer, it's a volunteer.
We could label it as all volunteer.
It's a volunteer committee that, anybody that chooses to be on this committee recognizes that they're coming on as a volunteer.
That would probably be
I think
smart.
we should add that
But is that something we want to do, right? And I guess I'm not bringing this up to say this should stop us. I'm saying we just need to go in. If this is going to cost us something, we need to go in knowing what, at least roughly, what that is. I mean, do we? Because when you go with a volunteer committee, right, that's harder. It's
Might be hard
volunteer
to get
time
people
versus
to do
someone's
it.
job.
Yep. No,
We're bringing these
it's a fair
people on
point.
because they are our experts in our community and their time is valuable. So we want them for those reasons. So
Well, the central office people that would be coming to this would be part of their salary, right? That's-
Correct.
Yeah, so it doesn't impact them. It's really just.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys.
Was that too fast?
9:30 at night.
And principals, I believe, right?
No,
Yes, anybody that's.
I'm sorry.
administrative.
I'm not trying to be crass. I'm just.
Can I ask? I apologize because
Yeah.
I know I'm not. A question: Could
Yeah.
could the committee make it a volunteer committee to start and see how those conversations evolved and then change it?
I
if we
think
need
it
to?
could be a volunteer committee to start, and I think if there needs to be amendments, I think that the advisory committee could come to the school committee for amendments to the guidelines.
So you actually have language in here that allows that to happen.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of
Yeah.
page 3, which isn't numbered. But if you imagine the numbers, the language says, the school committee member acting as chair may choose to initiate initial assembly, a smaller committee, all with volunteers. It doesn't say that, but they could be, with the goal ultimately to expand the committee to be inclusive of all stakeholders. And at that point, that question could be handled.
Yeah,
It
to be
doesn't
clear,
need to be handled right now.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying we should hold up voting on this for the
No,
budget
but-
question,
No, but
but
it's a
we
great
need
point.
to know what it is, and this is something we need to do for everything that comes before us, right?
Yeah.
So
You're asking the right
I
question.
think we could say we don't know, but we say we need to know in the month, whatever the right time frame is,
Yeah.
right? We need to know in the right time frame as we look at these, because we're asking our experts for their time.
Correct, and it's a committee, I'm assuming if it starts in January or so, you're gonna move into next year, we're planning FY '26 budget, so
It's gonna be
you could conceivably say we could plan to put funds in if there are stipended work that needs to happen.
I think that's fair, given the conversations that have been happening, that this committee will be a smaller committee to start with,
Yes.
while they establish what
Yes.
that this evolves into.
get
Right.
moving, right? It
Right,
has
to get
move.
it started.
Yeah.
It has to just get started.
Okay, but it's a great point. And we have
So,
remember-
I think at this point, we're
Yeah.
going through it, it's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
volunteer
yeah.
basis. It'll eventually evolve, and if we have to make amendments and changes, we can do that.
So do we need to put that word in somewhere?
We can certainly,
We should make it clear if we're asking people to join.
And a
up
volunteer
front,
basis,
right?
yeah.
It's volunteer
Yep.
and not paid,
Yeah.
if that's what we're going with, right? And see what happens, if people can spend their time, right? These are our
I
experts.
think one of my struggles with that, and yes, you're right, we're paying for expertises, but that's only some then members of the committee would be getting stipends and not
Others.
parents that are participating or
Yeah.
other members of the community. And then so there's this weird differential doing this. I don't know. I'm just naming it as a thing. I don't yet have an opinion about it.
No, I don't.
But it can be awkward.
You're
Yeah.
right about that in a way, but I mean, in a way, we're saying to parents, we're giving you an opportunity to participate. There's no reason they should be paid for that, but a teacher, I mean, that's her living, and you're asking her to.
But the parents' time is valuable too. And their expertise with children who receive services is valuable too. It's like, in terms of stakeholders.
Yeah.
May I make-
I think if you move forward as you're starting as a
Right.
volunteer committee, and as this work moves forward, there's obviously that committee can come forth to the school committee and say, there is some extra work we need to do, and, here's some summer work we'd like to be able to bring, and then we would address it at that time.
So somewhere in section 3, Madam Chair,
So-
we should add a sentence that says all positions are voluntary.
Or just the word volunteer in front of the word membership.
Volunteer committee composition, yeah, just something.
Yeah,
Or
okay, there you
the,
go.
the ACE should represent a variety of perspectives and expertise with volunteer membership drawn from the
There you
following
go.
groups.
Okay, so I'm just adding
Put it at the
volunteer.
top and applies to everything else.
Okay.
All right.
Any other comments or suggestions?
No, Madam Chair, I would like to move that we adopt this as now composed based on our discussion.
I would like to second.
Okay, any further discussion?
Thank you to all the people who
Put this together.
got this to here.
Well,
Definitely
it's
a
been
group effort,
an
an
over-
evolving process.
Over 6 months.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm excited for this to move forward. And I'm hoping North Andover, we can really set a standard for the rest of the state.
That'd be great.
All right, Mr. Hicks,
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich,
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Cormier.
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, and that will be approved. I do want to go ahead and appoint the 2 school committee members to serve on the advisory committee so that they may take over to start to put the rest of this together, to start the initial meetings, to get the ball rolling on this. There has been several interest in this committee, but as I think forward to the future and other things that we have going on for the committee, I think that there's 2 people that will work well on this, and I think that there's other areas that I see other school committee members working in the future. So given that,
I believe because of the kind of committee, it has to be elected. There's 2 kinds of committees, as Mr. Brown was pointing out.
Yeah.
One is appointed by the chair, and one is elected by the
okay,
magnet
so we want to
committee.
make elections.
It's not what we want. It's
What is our policy?
It's
It's
what
our
we
policy.
chose.
Our
Yeah,
policy
right.
is,
So we're
yeah.
going forward with elections.
Yeah.
Is that what our policy says for an advisory committee?
I don't know for a
Yes,
We can look it up.
Yeah, I remember it does.
It does say
Can we just
elections.
double check?
Sure.
Do we want,
Need to pull it up,
How
but,
do we-
do I have a copy of that? I think it was linked.
It's linked at one point.
Anyone know what policy it is?
So long ago.
BDF?
How slow is my phone?
Nope.
BDR.
Advisory committees to the BDF. Advisory committees may be created by the school committee to serve as task force for special purposes. If advisory committee is required by state or federal law, its composition and appointment will meet all the guidelines established for that particular type. The composition of task force and other advisory committees will be broadly representative. Appointments to such committees will be made by the committee. Appointment of staff members to such committees.
Right, so the school committee appoints.
Appointments to such committee will be made by the committee, not by the chair.
Okay, so we need to elect.
Yeah, that's in practice.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the
Yes,
opportunity
thank
just to double check.
Yes, all right. Okay, so then we need to take nominations.
Okay, I'll nominate Mr. Moskovich.
I will second that nomination.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Okay. Vote. Mr. Brown?
That's Mr. Hicks.
And Mr.
It must be getting late.
9:30 at night.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're going around.
You've been called worse, John.
Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right. For our second position, I nominate Mr. Hicks.
And I'll second
Second.
that.
Any discussion on
We need
that?
name tags here.
All right. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So Mr. Moskovich and Mr. Brown will be our
Mr. Hicks.
It's getting late.
In fairness,
Punchy.
this has been a really tough week.
Yes.
We should be very, generous.
Michelle, you're going to enjoy these minutes.
Mr. Moskovich and Mr. Hicks will serve as our 2 school committee members on the Advisory Committee on Special Education. It is in your hands now. Thank you. All right. We're going to move on to the superintendent goals.
All right.
We were doing so good.
We were. It's all good. Here we go.
Yeah.
I'm
We,
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the language says one of us is the chair. I think no matter which of us is the chair, we should both work on agenda, but that is what the language says.
Where?
in the
I think
policy.
the
Number
comprehensive
11.
advisory committee will determine who's chair.
It says if there's two, one of these two will be the chair. It
Mhm.
doesn't say who picks.
Doesn't say who picks.
Doesn't say.
Oh, man, we're.
Rock, paper, scissors?
So, I mean, I would say as the advisory committee, I mean, we have some appointed we have members that are there to serve already. I would advise the advisory committee to determine the chair of the committee.
In the initial small group.
Right.
Can I?
Please.
I've been thinking about this for a long time.
Okay.
Sasha Weiner, CPAC. So I think that everyone has their strengths and a really key role to play. And one of the really exciting things about having Ed on the school committee and being part of this is that he has such amazing background and can help a lot with our data. And so I think it's also just thinking about allocation of time resources for everyone. And if we need to rely on Ed really heavily for some data review and his expertise, then I also think that it may be helpful to have someone else who's like doing that executive corresponding. Like, Michelle, could you please post these things? Like, so that would be my initial thought, and that the small group consider everyone's strengths and allocate resources accordingly, because if I've learned anything, it's that we only have so much time. That would be my 2 cents. And we're really excited to get this going, and thank you to the school committee so much for committing resources to this review last year and then taking it one step further and creating this committee. I think that you have done a huge service to our community. So thank you.
Sounds like.
I mean, Mr. Moskovich and Mr. Hicks.
That is Hicks.
Getting it right.
No, she not only got the right names, but in the right order.
I mean, I think that is a very logical plan, and that you're very good with the data, and that is a huge undertaking. If you would want to serve as chair.
I would not mind.
Okay. I think.
That's okay with Mr. Moskovich. He might say no.
Well, the different functions of the chair. I'm happy to divide the labor, particularly not to do it all.
Right. I think just as far as setting
but
meetings,
setting
agendas,
meetings,
getting them posted, getting the word out.
Right. But
The organizational
my suggestion
part.
is that in terms of setting agenda, we should both be involved in it.
Yes.
Sure. Yes,
In the
absolutely.
same way the
there's
chair
the
and the vice
question
chair
of
do that.
Actually
Correct.
running meetings, and maybe what we should do is split them depending on the topic.
That's fair too.
Okay.
Happy to be collaborative in that way.
Okay. So, I mean, what I'll say is, I think Mr. Hicks will have the official chair title, but the school committee members will work together in the roles. Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay with that?
I probably would have done it the other way around, but I'll
Okay.
settle for it.
All right, let's move forward to the superintendent goals.
Great. So I had an opportunity to share just brief goals with you, and here's just a little bit more of a flesh out of these goals, just in keeping with what we have presented from our school improvement plans. Just a reminder that goals come from our strategic plan. And so I just have that there for you, but you can move on to goal 1. So the first goal is the North Andover Public Schools will strengthen and rebuild the leadership team at both the district and school level to enhance support for all of our students, particularly those who have been historically marginalized. Largely, this goal speaks to the work that we're doing that I've shared with you in terms of our principal learning arc, and then our leadership meetings and our principal and CO meetings. But some of the things that looking to improve our improvement benchmarks is 100% of the leadership team will participate in educator professional development. So it's important that our leaders are participating in our professional development. leaders will report that professional learning is relevant to their work 80% of the time. So after every one of our principal arcs or leadership meetings or principal operation meetings, we have an exit ticket where principals tell us if this is relevant to their work, if we've met the targets that we set out for them, if they found this information useful, if the presentation style worked for them. And then I will be visiting the schools at least once per month to observe instruction and other events. On this goal, I highlighted for you just the dates of our leadership team and then the landing page, so you have some option of what that looks like.
Pardon me.
Sure.
Do we want to comment, questions, save it for the end?
Do you want to do each goal?
Yes, let's do goal by goal.
Go by goal? Okay. I don't have a problem with this, but one of the issues I always have with goals is they should be measurable. And you can measure a little bit here with the, make sure 100% participation and that they report back that this is relevant to them, hopefully 4 out of 5 times. But I don't know. I don't know that I have the answer. I guess one thing that's missing here is can we get feedback from their staffs as to whether they're making progress as leaders somehow? You see where I'm going with that? I'm just trying to get some way to measure that there's really is really beneficial. And that may not be the way to do it, but that's one thing that occurs to me.
Right. So I also think, though, that you're trying, yes, there is some way of getting feedback from staff, but just want to remind you the goal is to rebuild the leadership team, and that I really feel is largely my responsibility in terms of bringing the team together, helping them know who the leaders are of the district, and then really trying to separate curriculum work, operational work, and then leadership as the whole leadership team. There are some outcomes in terms of meeting notes, agendas, and participation feedback, but I think we could build in some kind of, I could build in something for them to report back, and there could be a check-in for staff.
I'm actually okay, Mr. Brown, with the things that are listed here. I think it's part of it, though, is then the comprehensive nature of what those meeting notes, agendas, and feedback look like. Making that when presenting those, of course, anonymously in terms of who's writing it, but more qualitative feedback than just quantitative, and making sure that it shows us an accurate picture of why it was beneficial and how it helped them improve. I think that would be helpful for me in terms of yes, this goal was accomplished. I don't know if that's just a single reflection at the end about what could have been improved. This is why I've learned something that shows us that the team is a team again.
Correct. Yep.
And I have all that. So
of course you do, but not just
share it with you
here's
and-
our agenda, what we talked about, and then nothing really to
That's what
demonstrate that that's what you talked about and you actually did the stuff. I want to see the stuff that comes out of it.
I'm not trying to be difficult, but just think that goals should have measures.
There's a satisfaction survey or something. to that
Okay,
effect that we
even
could do.
that, yes, even that.
Well,
Just to tell you that they heard you, right?
And the other thing is, so the work we do in largely the principal leadership arc is then the work that my expectation is that the principals bring that back to their building. So we have been focusing on MCAS and the principal learning arc and helping our leaders learn or do better at looking at MCAS results. And now they're bringing that back to their staff. So that is my goal, that what we teach them in terms of curriculum and principal learning arc time is then they're doing that during their faculty meeting time.
Oh, so one way to measure that would be to get feedback from the people that attend the faculty meetings and do a little survey and say, hey, did you learn this? Did you hear this?
Right.
Then you'd know. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
so could I suggest?
Can we put something in there
Sure.
like that?
Well, I have a suggestion. I think you're right to ask the question, but in this case, it's not normal kind of data. So just as Pam said, that one of her goals is make her principals more effective leaders of the school, education leaders. So maybe you should think about how we would know that. I'm not sure whether asking the teachers is the right way or listening to have the principals, maybe having the principals come and talk about what they're doing differently than they did a year before, or something. You said pretty clearly what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe you can give some thought to what would be the best way for us to see whether it worked.
Right, and I'm really trying to develop the team. So I think one of the larger pieces for me is that our larger leadership team, or our assistant principals and our directors, all come together, keep being very consistent with those meetings, being very thoughtful and mindful about the work that we're doing there. That is the work that I would love for them to be able to come back and tell you that that has raised their own professionalism, that they, perhaps it is actually asking the leaders in a more anonymous way to give some feedback on the things that they experienced in the leadership team meetings.
But it could also be, if I understand what you're trying to do, which I'm highly supportive of, is principals be better at helping teachers improve their instruction. And I don't see any reason why a principal couldn't come and talk to, you tell me, but to say, here's what I was able to do, and it was because of these.
Right. It's like our principals coming to being very much part of the Hill for Literacy work, and then being very present while we're training our teachers in the data meetings, and then being present at the data meetings and running the data meetings.
Exactly.
And being able to talk about that. And then also, I'd like to see our assistant principals having a voice at the table, and participating. And you can't all be in the same place together, but that's why we do our leadership meetings after school, so that all assistant principals and all directors can attend. So it's after the last school day ends. You comfortable with that, David?
Yeah, anything, several of these ideas would work for me. I'm just trying to, I just like to see a way to prove that you accomplished the goal, that's all. I think you should have discretion as to, you can bring forward whatever idea you think is the best way to do that. That's fine.
I think there's a lot of leeway. Superintendent Lathrop, in the participant feedback phrasing of that, of however that looks. Yeah. To sort of demonstrate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
What's the definition of the leadership team?
Composition or definition?
Composition, I guess.
So the leadership team are all of the principals, all of the assistant principals, and then all of the directors. So directors would be like the STEM director, the math director, the director of technology, director of personnel and operations, director of guidance, the assistant directors for special education, the director of athletics. So anybody that has an administrative license and is working as an administrator in this district is part of the leadership team.
This is like 30-ish, give or take.
About 30.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. And so that's the large one that we meet after school together.
Okay.
And this, I think the district had leadership team meetings prior to COVID. I mean, we all, that COVID was tricky. It's getting back in practice. But it's also, for me, less about the nuts and bolts. That's why we have an operational meeting with the principals. And leadership meeting is really about either working on a curriculum item for our district, whether it's high quality instructional materials or MTSS support, or it's working on our goals. It's where we worked on our school improvement plans together. We'll be diving into MCAS. We'll be working on, I'll bring the budget, the beginning of the budget, potential budget cuts that the principal started to the larger leadership team.
Thank you.
I guess I also want to say in this goal, I feel like it's my responsibility as the interim superintendent to also help all leaders in the district strengthen their own leadership skills and also have opportunities outside of the district if possible. That's why, while we have funding issues, but we've been really we have 2 great collaboratives that we work with, now working with the ECLC, Massachusetts Partnership for Youth we belong to, and that allows our staff to be able to participate in free workshops. But I'm really trying to encourage our leaders to get outside of North Andover and participate in some of these workshops so that they also have an understanding of building the network. That's really how these things work, right? Is in any field that you're in, you really want to build your network and have resources outside of North Andover as well as inside.
Yeah, that's another thing you can measure.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think you would want that, right? You, in your role, you want that feedback to know that what the work you're doing is bearing fruit, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Goal 2 is North Andover Public Schools will strengthen our Tier 1 instruction and our multi-tiered system of supports for students in pre-K through 12. So this will be looking at high-quality instructional materials, the deeper learning and equity, and then also looking at multi-tiered systems of support and equity. The reason for this goal, we saw it in the CPAC presentation, but students in our subgroup are not finding as much success on MCAS and other accountability data. I linked for you our school and district profile, so you don't have to go there, but you can see how our subgroups are doing, and that is an area of concern. We're going to, so some of the things that we're improvement benchmarks, and in K through 5 we have a common schedule, and we're going to continue both WIT and Wisdom and Eureka implementation. 100% of our K to 5 grade levels will establish common assessments that coordinate with Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 instruction in English Language Arts. And our pre-K to 12 schools will revise our student assistant team procedures to produce improved multi-tiered systems of support. So the student assistant team is the team in the building where if a teacher has concerns about a student, whether that's academically, socially, emotionally, they can come to that team to talk about the student and to potentially problem solve. What I've noticed is that we have some great teams running throughout the district, but we don't have as much consistency, and we don't have consistency in all of our teams. It doesn't mean that any one of them is running better than the other ones, but I think it's important that our student assistant teams have consistency across the district, that when our teachers are coming to student assistant team, we have an expectation of what data they've already collected to bring forth to talk about that student, and that there's a plan and process. Sometimes people think of the student assessment team as sort of the precursor to a special education evaluation, and it can be. It can be that you work through student assessment team and that you do decide as a team that a special education evaluation is warranted, but it doesn't need to be, nor should it be just that vehicle. You really should be able to come to student assistant team in order to talk about a problem of a student, but we really need to develop some consistency. I'm not sure if it's on here, but one of the things that we'll be doing is revisiting the DCAP, our district accommodation plan. We rolled it out, we shared it with you last year. I think through some of the work through the Urban Collaborative and some of the feedback I've received is that we're still not using it as effectively as we could in all schools. I think that's what some of the things we've heard. So we are doing a retraining of the DCAP with our principals, and then my expectation is the principals will do a retraining of the DCAP with their staff.
In terms of the outcomes, I love the idea of it. I'm just wondering if MCAS data is the best measure in terms of when it comes in. Would it be better to also include either DIBELS or MAPS or other assessments that we use that we can see sooner than over the summer?
Yeah, you're not going to see this data
right.
until, so I'll add some of our own measures.
And then just thinking about whatever the common assessments are or the new procedures for the SAT or whatever it is, just sharing those as well.
Correct. That could be a great outcome.
Because those are going to be documented.
Mm-hmm.
And just,
it's documented.
Yeah.
We'll have very clear
procedures and
what the procedures are, the policy, who runs a student assistant team. That is different in some of our buildings, so really clearly defining that.
Could I make a couple comments on that? I mean, it would be wonderful to close the gap by 50%, but
41.
Oh, well. I doubt that it's going to happen, and I would think that there are gains much less than that would still be quite impressive. I wonder if to me, the relevant criteria is how are the students moving? In other words, are students who are far behind now catching up? So that certainly would mean looking at longitudinal data, and that I agree totally with Mr. Hicks. You want the dibbles and stuff, because there are the dibbles, you know, it 3 times a year, so you can really start looking at, are the kids moving? So maybe the way to think about it is taking the lowest quartile of students 3 or 4 years ago. How much progress did they make in a year? And are we doing better with them now?
Mm-hmm. Right. But also keep in mind that the dibbles and the map are only measures that we use in the primary and the middle school.
Yeah.
So
Right, but for those grades,
correct.
Yeah.
that would be a more,
Yeah.
there isn't basically no longitudinal data other than MCAS for the after grade 3. Is that when we stop those two, or do we go through grade 5?
Map goes through 8th grade.
Oh, okay.
But even looking at, like, including growth data for, because if it is aligned to being a predictor of MCAS success, so like
Correct.
growth data there would be helpful in terms of like kids who are struggling, and if they're struggling by less,
Well,
if not meeting criteria, that's still really good.
I mean, that's what basically what you want to
Yeah.
do is move more of them faster, and as we have a direct measure, we should use it.
I was also thinking as I listened to CPAC tonight, so we have focused primarily on our Hispanic and Latino students and closing that achievement gap, but I think that this goal could be widened to look at special education as well, seeing some of the evidence that we've seen tonight.
Are we voting on this tonight, or is this the first?
No, this is the first read.
Oh, yeah, so like thinking
No, we
maybe
discussed.
around other
Didn't we discuss
suburbs.
it before, or did we postpone
I only
it?
gave you the broad goals before.
This
I
is the first time we're seeing more specific.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I remember Ms. Moskovich, she gave us the broad goals, and then we said this one we would look at the more details and we'd vote on them at the next one.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's significant, but where did the 41%? Why that number?
It's very specific.
That's very specific.
Is that the state number that they gave us?
Well, because it's,
Oh, is it? Is that where it comes from?
it's bigger than 40, but not much as big as 45.
It's the state assigned number.
Okay. I thought that was just.
Is that where it comes from?
Kind of came out of the blue.
Oh.
Okay.
The problem with that is if we start doing a better job with our advanced kids, everybody may be doing better, and the ratio may be the same.
So, yeah. But we have struggled with this achievement gap for a while, so we need to move the needle.
Okay.
Goal 3 is budgeting and equity, making strategic decisions and design systems to budget appropriately for the needs of the district. I think this is pretty evident. Why do we need this? Because we had a budget deficit.
How simple that statement is. What time is
Seems
it?
so simple.
Right. So some of the things, every month, leadership, I'll present you a budget report to the school committee. So thinking about, we had a $5.5 million budget deficit last year. We're trying to move forward to FY25, thinking about 50% of that, because we've already obviously identified that we're still in a budget deficit. Some of the things, strategies and activities, I've shared with you a list of proposed budget directives, thinking of FY26. This is really school committee budget directives, but sort of working with the town manager, some ideas that you might want to think about. The leadership team will review budget directives at all leadership meetings. So following a school committee meeting, after I share the budget with all of you, I share that same presentation with the leaders. And then we dive into it a little bit deeper. So there's always a budget conversation at our leadership meetings, specifically the operational meeting with our leaders. Leaders are examining and adjusting their budgets, their procurement, their budgeting and spending. So one of the things that we're working on this year is understanding procurement laws. That has been something new for leaders in the district, but they've handled it very well. Just understanding why they may need contracts. And we have sent Tracy to become a procurement officer as well. We'll continue to seek out grants for additional funding and any other kind of opportunities. We're enhancing our collaboration with the town of North Andover to align our budget process and oversee and monitor all expenses. I feel like I'm in Munis several times during a school day. And then, go ahead.
A couple of suggestions. Recognizing our lack of historical data, we should implement keeping historical data going forward, right?
It's an interesting thing because we have historical data. We know what we have spent money on. The problem is that the budgets weren't appropriated correctly, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I'm basically getting at, right? Like making sure we have, I guess maybe a better way to put it is making sure we have accurate historical data going forward. And then also, well, let me put it this way. I have a bunch of specific suggestions that I think might be more effectively shared with you individually if the committee is okay with that. Just ideas, suggestions, but I don't think we need the time to go through them here, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Just a question on where a person's responsible. Why is the town manager listed as a person responsible for your goal?
I listed the town manager because we have a collaboration with the town and we're working together on our budget in order to close this 5.5 and by 50%. I feel as though she's responsible in some respects because we have signed that MOA where I'm meeting with her so that's why I put her down there. I mean, I can take her off.
When the person's responsible, it's not the person responsible for doing the thing, it's the person
It's part of those strategies and activities.
It's who's you're responsible for working with to do the thing.
Correct. Ultimately, I'm responsible for the goal, but so it's sort of, you see, it goes in those columns. So if you think about the enhanced collaboration with the town of North Andover to align our budget process, I need the town manager to work with me on that.
So I have a question about this, which is, ultimately, it seems to me we don't have a choice, that we can't spend more money than the town gives us.
We can't. That's the problem.
We shouldn't. But
but
we did. Proven that wrong.
But what I'm saying is that
We're not supposed to.
it's up to the select board and the FinCom to decide how much in addition to our appropriation they're going to let us spend. And if they've said to us that they would be happy to fill the gap at half of 5.5, that's fine. But if they're not, then I don't think we have any choice. I may not like it, but, right, if they say, they've told you, and, I think you deserve a lot of credit because of the credibility you've built with them that they've done this. They've offered to come up with a significant amount of money. But if that's all, then we have to fit with that, right?
Well, I don't think it's also not fair of us to keep asking them for money if we're not doing our part to continually try to trim it and find ways to reduce it.
No, I mean, this isn't a criticism of the superintendent. She is actively working to carry out the very wise suggestion you just made. All I'm saying is how far we go this year is ultimately up to them, not up to us.
Right, but this goal is based on FY25, and I'm being honest and saying to you realistically, operating the way we're operating, and knowing where we are, that 50% that we're still going to have a deficit at the end of this year, and realistically, cutting that $5.5 million by half, in my opinion, is a realistic goal. You're right, if we don't have the funds, but I guess I'm also foreshadowing that we, going into this year, and I think these are some things that maybe is more on goal number 4, but going into this year, while I sort of, typically there's a superintendent school committee goal, but going into this year, we eliminated some unbudgeted teaching assistant and other roles, but these adjustments were not sufficient. They weren't enough to fully offset our operational costs. And we have a CLA report that says that without operational changes, we're going to continue, the forecast doesn't look good. We're going to continue overspending. If To come in at a zero budget, we would have to make drastic.
Well, the school, but we've already been told that we don't need to come in at zero if zero is measured by what was appropriated. They've said, okay, you would have the number at your fingertips more than I, but something like $1 million or $1.5 million additional revenue they're willing to make available to us. But if they don't make more than that, it's my view we have to spend only what they give us, and that we should be making cuts, which you're probably already doing, right away. Do you see what I'm saying? We can't wait till the end of the year.
But I think we also have to be realistic that yes, they're going to help us and give us some funds. We may be in the same position where I'm asking the town manager to then, if there are no more funds, to also support the way that she did last year in terms of some freezing in her own departments. We have an obligation, I believe, to continue to educate our students in North Andover. In order to come in at zero, we would have to make drastic changes this school year that I don't think that is in the best interest of students or our community, and I don't think that the school town manager or the select board or finance board would think that either.
I don't think we disagree. I think all I'm saying is we need to make that case to them. We need to say to them that we think it would be a bad mistake to make these cuts, and here's why.
Which is why I made a realistic, I believe, goal in saying to you that 50%.
And I think, Superintendent Lathrop, I think that's an appropriate mark. And then also when we go to look at, like, in terms of measuring success, it's not a you did it or you didn't, like, in terms of the official rubric. It's accomplished, made significant progress, made no like there's like that gray area, and like getting really close to it is going to, like, making significant progress to there is a darn good thing, right? And like, so I understand why it's structured the way it is. Realistically, in terms of what you doing all the hard work, doing all the hard work that you're about to do, and knowing, like, that's only going to give us so much, and knowing what the town has indicated they might be able to do for us, I think this is spot on where we think we should be. But I appreciate the straightforwardness of that.
Question though, about just from my understanding, right? So if you accomplish this goal that you put here, is it still TBD whether the town can support that, right? In other words, if you land where your goal is, right, that still will require the town to provide.
Well, more than they've already offered.
That's my concern. Yeah.
Have they offered enough to make that acceptable?
I guess that's the question.
Yes, but I also think that we have, to Mr. Moskovich's point, we have made cuts, or we are reducing our spending, so there are things that we're doing as well to not be at $5.5 million. So I'm not projecting a $5.5 million deficit this year.
Right.
You know, we're projecting somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5. So sort of, I'm already partly there, in terms of that work.
But we don't. But am I correct in my understanding that at the moment we still don't have that? In other words, your projection comes exactly true.
Correct.
And and our deficit becomes 2.5. And you know, you've accomplished this goal then, but do we survive? In other words, like
if we come at 2.5, then we also have offsets of about 100. We have revenue of about 1.8 million in terms of either what we have revenue bringing in or what I believe the select board is going to appropriate towards us, or the Medicaid money that we were able to receive after town meeting.
So it is still a little bit of a moving target.
Correct.
But the discussions have been ongoing. This is not a surprise to anybody, right?
No,
This
is not a surprise. So no surprises. I shared my budget update with both the select board and the finance board at the beginning of this month. That projected just what I shared with you last week in terms of where we are.
So okay.
So maybe another part of this is that you, which I assume you're already doing, is to make clear why cutting more than the $2.5 million is a really bad idea, and why the town shouldn't want to do that.
That'd be part of your presentations, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the work that we're doing now in terms of what proposed budget cuts could be. That's why we're looking at the item, what's the impact if we do, here, we could do this, what's the impact of that? And then what's the financial cost?
But if they are not going to agree to it, the sooner we know that, the better.
But as
Correct.
far as the goal, are
Goal's
we?
good, yeah.
I know, it's a slightly different discussion.
We're-
So
yes.
fair
The
enough.
goal's fine.
The goal is fine.
Good goal.
And goal 4 is an idea of our shared goal as we look at FY26. I've drafted a few things just to get us going, but the North Andover Public School Superintendent, North Andover School Committee will develop an enhanced, efficient budget protocols to ensure the system operates within its allocated budget in a reasonable time frame.
The only thing I would say to add here to the outcomes, because I like how it
Mhm.
lists the systems to be created with enhanced budget tracking procedures, stricter financial oversight, and increased operational efficiency. I think that's great. One thing I think that would be great to call out is helping to, I think an outcome we need is that we build a culture of fiscal responsibility. And that's kind of the people side of this, right? We have the procedures, but all of us need, like when we manage our own budgets, all of us need to watch the dollars. So just that culture of fiscal responsibility.
I would also say increase budget transparency between the district and the school committee.
It's numbered.
Between the district and the school?
Between the superintendent. Well, yeah. But the way it's reported to us, in the past, the way it's reported has always not been quite so transparent on what's actually happening with the budget.
Okay. Sorry, my brain's not functioning as well. So
I'm just wondering, I'll build a realistic budget for FY 26. I think for me, what that would mean is knowing if we continue, if the goal is to do next year what we do this year in terms of our programming, what is that cost? Without making any additions to it or subtractions, like what does it really mean to run these programs again next year? What's that number? And to build, and like that would, when you say a realistic budget, like I would define it as level services again for next year. And I think it's important that we know what that number is. And that might not be the number we can then ask for through the budget process in a town meeting, but I think it's important that we know what that cost is.
I agree.
rather than realistic, it's like almost an accurate level service budget.
Right.
Like
So
that's
to
what we
know
need,
how
whether
much
we
money
get it or
costs
not.
to run the budget, run
Yeah.
this district as it is right now.
Accurate level service,
And
yeah.
if we don't have that money, then there's the decisions of what are we going to move forward? What
Right.
things are we going to
What
keep?
things are not
Yeah.
going to happen, and or
Yeah.
what are we going to do to get the money to do that?
Yeah.
Correct.
But I think we can't have those conversations unless we actually know the
Know
cost.
how much we need.
And you're doing all the things
Yes.
to do that. But I guess it's just defining what that bullet point is a little clearer for me.
And I think that when the school committee, when you have your retreat, there's work that
Yeah.
will happen there that will build on this goal. Again, this is our shared goal together.
Yeah.
I'd like to add one, sorry.
Well, related to that, which has nothing to do with your goals, but I was reading through the well, it's related to what we're talking about, the
Technology.
policies with respect to the budget. And one of the policies is that the budget is expressed in terms of the foundation budget. It's a feature of state law, which I actually wrote, that the town, the foundation budget is sort of a guide from the state about what you need to spend. And I think one of the cases that you've made to me is that we probably are just barely above it where other towns are well above it. So at some point, it's not something to do immediately, but I think it's a good idea for us to know that. And I think it would be helpful in the discussion with the town to point out that communities we compare themselves. Because that's the state way of saying, adjusting for the kind,
Kids you have.
the kind of students you're teaching, this is kind of what we think you need. And if we're just barely above it and other school districts that are doing much better than we are, in terms of performance are way above it, that's actually helpful for us to know.
Right. I think that's part of our budget work.
Mhm.
I think I did put down on here, person responsible. It's obviously myself and school committee, but a finance director. I do think that
Right.
it would be nice if we had a finance director.
And you shouldn't worry about it till you do.
Right, but, you know, we have to make a budget regardless if we have a finance director
Right.
or not. That's
Yeah.
not going to be an option. But I do want to, you know, we don't have one yet. We have people that are working very hard, and we have a lot of support from the town. But that is a key position that will be crucial in developing appropriate budgets for the district.
I'd like to just suggest something for the budget directives, and it's basically what's in my head is forecasting and trends. It's something we've maybe not done a great job of in the past, trying to forecast changes in our costs, right? And maybe one way to do that, since one possible way to do that is to look at what other districts have experienced. Again, this would be something a budget director would do, of course, but and it may not be possible for you to grab that, but at least if we write it down in here, it doesn't get lost. Not in the goals, but in the directives.
In the budget directives.
Yeah. So that concept doesn't get lost.
So Madam Chairman, at some point, are general comments appropriate? You did all the particulars, but I'll have some general comments.
General comments on what?
On her goals as a whole.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So, when I read this, I was just really amazed in a positive way that the very first goal is about improving education of outcomes, and particularly by personal leadership by the superintendent and concentration on the principals. And then the second goal is about the curriculum side of improving instruction. And I've thought about, I've lost count, but probably in the time that I've been working with districts around the state, I must have met 20 or 30 superintendents. And my guess from all that is very few of them would have put the priorities in this order. And what I've learned is that it's exactly, this is what only when the superintendent does this does the district move ahead. And so I asked a friend of mine who has been in far more schools than I have, and I said to him, what % of superintendents would put those two things first? He said maybe 10%. I'm really impressed, and I think people should appreciate this.
Thank you. I like to think I'm an instructional leader at heart. That is who I am. The finance piece, I'm making my way through, and I've done school budgets, but this is obviously different. But if you listen to my why for coming here, my life, my work has been a lot about instructional leadership in terms of students, and then my passion is also in terms of helping colleagues and working with adults. And so,
let's just say there are far too many superintendents where that is not the case. So I just want to express my appreciation.
Well, and I'll give you kudos for coming up to speed very fast on this budget stuff.
Yes.
I concur. On the budget directives, I'm sorry, I'm pushing us along because
That's okay.
I'm tired. I think in terms of like what we say in terms of directions for the superintendent, if we could just rework the first one there to, like, I want to call out that we want to establish a level services budget. Because that matters a lot to me, because that's important that we do that.
Oh, it
Is that
absolutely
real?
is.
And I know I said that before, and I agree with you. It's sort of. Is that realistic, though?
Well, I
Level
think-
services, because we talked in one of our previous.
I don't think he's saying that we're going to necessarily
That
get
we
that.
wanna
He
know
wants
what
to
it
know
is.
what
You
a
need to
level
know.
service
Build what
budget
We need to
would-
build, okay, but then, because
Yeah.
we know there's been all this pent up, people have been cutting, so there's a pent up demand for things that we talked about. So it's almost like we need to incorporate some of that pent up demand for other
So it's almost
things
going
as
to be
well.
higher.
Yeah, level service is like our starter, right? Like we'd have an accurate level service budget, but then we're
it's all
also,
the stuff we've been denied.
we've been not all, but like some of those things, right, that we've been denied, that our kids have been denied, our teachers have been denied. So we need somehow to sprinkle some, just for realism, right? Even maybe it's not FY26, but FY27, we need
I think
Right.
start
both
to
are
think
right.
about some of those.
I totally agree. You can't really think about this unless you know if we're going to do exactly the same thing next year, how much it's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
cost.
And then
We
have
don't
another.
have to say that that's good enough.
Yeah, I'm just, but
Right.
that's our building block. I just,
Yeah.
we get
Yeah.
that and a little bit
And I
of
just
the-
want it to be like our philosophy for this year. Like in other years, it might be, I don't think yellow services is good enough right now. We
Yeah.
need to expand in other ways, and like I would push for that. But I think like for this coming fiscal year, that is a
must-have. It's a
For me,
must-have.
that's like
Yeah.
what we really need to do.
Right.
And I just want us to like capture that as our goal ourselves and work towards that. So that it's just so we know what we're dealing with. In other years, I would have said level services are not what we should be working towards. We're not like that hasn't been doing enough to help our kids. I want us to see do more than level services. Right now, given the financial picture we've been in for the past year and a half, I think like we haven't been at level services like we have. We've been over that, and I just like we have to reset and like make sure that's what we're accomplishing.
It's a good point. I was being too hopeful, I think. I think you're right. I
And
think you're right.
and
I think
and
you're right. You're
but
right.
You're right.
No.
I'm a little sad that I'm not being hopeful enough.
Well, I
But maybe
think
we'll-
there's-
Well, you
I
could-
think
you
there's
could-
a level-
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
You could certainly identify a bucket of things that are really urgent, but, you know, as soon as possible, right?
Correct, and I think there's level services if we want to operate the district the way we've been operating the district. But I also think that there may be some things that we want to trade,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That are not, we've been doing them, but this is not beneficial to our district, it's not working, and so we don't want to spend our money on that anymore, but this will be better for our district.
Okay.
So I will take, if you have specific, comments you want to share with me, feel free to call me or come in and see me or send me an email. And then I will, just like the work we did today, maybe I'll put the comments in red, anything I add to in red, so that
That'd
you
be
can see the
helpful.
changes.
And these are the same class sizes we've had for several years now.
These are the same class size guidelines, so what I'm proposing, sorry, it's late. What I'm proposing is just a reminder that these are our class sizes and that we should run classes at these class sizes. We are running some classes that are below our class size, and we have some that are pushing right to the top of our class size. I think for FY26, we need to make adjustments.
So I'm not finding that. I read through these.
It's
The
on the
budget
budget
directives.
directive on this sheet. Right there.
Oh, sorry,
It's okay.
And Ed, you would not necessarily know this, but these are were you here last year when we did this?
No, I was not.
These are, the directives are the official directions that the school committee gives the superintendent in terms of what the school committee wants to see happen in the next budget. So
Oh,
these
I
are
see.
her,
I
He's
gave
just
some. I gave
suggesting
you some
these
ideas.
Yes.
yeah,
I
Which
You
I-
gave us a starting point.
which I think are pretty good ideas.
Yeah.
They're similar to some of the things we've done in the past, especially with class sizes. But it's what we prioritize in terms of what's coming next.
Well, so I guess I would just comment on that I don't think that, I guess this is really what Pam was just saying. There's some things we're not doing. You and I have talked about this. There's some things we really have to be excellent. And I would give up, I'd raise the average class size by 1 to do it. I've seen schools with 3 times our poverty rate and 22, 23 kids in a class doing just fine. So class size is a tool. It's not an end in itself. And there are other tools that need to be traded off, and I wouldn't want to get in the way of the superintendent's flexibility to come say to us, I need these 3 or 4 things, and here's how I'm going to pay for them.
And just in terms, I agree. In terms of historical perspective, our class sizes weren't at 22, 23 before these were in place. There were 25, 26 and higher. So like this was the goal that they had for many years because they were bad. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
23.
So it's interesting because the foundation budget was actually built on class sizes, and those numbers were developed with a bunch of superintendents, and they're pretty close to this, actually. Maybe not 18, that's awfully small. But the rest, yeah, it's about right.
Okay. We're gonna move on.
Yep.
We have policy BDFA updates. We've pushed this a few times. So what this was, to remind you, BDFA and BDFAE were replacing BDFA, BDFAE1, and BDFAE2 and BDFAE3. These were recommendations by MASC as changes to the policies. Basically, what they have done is consolidated them and taken out unnecessary things that are in the statute that didn't need to be repetitive in the policy.
Since they did a good job on the first one, there's no reason we shouldn't accept their recommendations to change
So
it.
BDFA has to do with school councils. Again, a lot of the things were taken out because it's in the Mass General laws. And the school improvement plan, again, just some revisions. I know Ms. Lathrop and we did speak about this July 1st deadline and possibly changing that deadline of when the approval of the school improvement plans need to be done by the superintendent.
Yeah, I think July 1 is, it's a good goal to get to. So typically your school council would meet and create your school improvement plan before the end of the school year so that you are prepared to start the school year moving forward. We are getting there. We're not there yet, I'll be honest. The last 2 years, we have worked on our school improvement plans. Last year was a little bit later, was more towards September, and then we came here. This year, we started working on our school improvement plans at our summer retreat, which is in August, to be able to have them created. So it is challenging. I think it will be challenging for our school councils to have a school improvement plan created by June, in essence, before they leave, to be able to have it for July 1. I do think it's a goal, and that makes sense that you would want one created that way, but perhaps
Could
September
I
1.
just suggest that, given all the stuff that's on your plate, you just tell us what date you want and we change it to that?
Well, I think it's a really good idea. Well, in line with that, I think like the goal of having it July 1st is so that the principal or the leader of the building has time to then ideally design what the professional development is and to plan those things out for the rest of the school year. And so you're not doing that in October and you've already wasted
Correct.
6 weeks. So I feel like an August 15th deadline still gives you that flexibility of, okay, this is what we're really working on, and now I have to develop that plan. So
And
I
that's
feel
not
like
to- I
a
mean,
little
that's-
later is okay.
It's not to say that that's the absolute, I mean, they could still get it in sooner.
Correct.
That's still an
But like
option.
a September 1st deadline for me would seem silly because you've already had your PE days at the beginning of the year in some cases, and you've lost that opportunity to do that planning. So I want there to be a deadline before school starts so that it impacts the work that happens to get ready for the school year. But I want to give as much time to that as possible. That might not have made sense at this late
Well,
hour.
and I think because we have moved towards, it's hard for me to speak about things that happened when I wasn't here.
Mhm.
But, and I think that COVID was definitely challenging for all school districts, having worked in one during COVID, that things like meeting with your school councils was not necessarily your top priority. I'll be 100% as a principal during COVID in order to get our school improvement plans. So we have rebirthed the school improvement plans and supported leaders in looking at goals that support the goals of the district. In a school council should be having some opportunity to meet and discuss school improvement goals specific to that school as well. And there's probably work that we need to do around our school councils and helping our school councils understand the role of a school council. So right now, I believe that largely the principals, along with support from the leadership, central office leadership, have been developing school improvement plans and presenting them to their council.
I think the other tricky thing is sometimes the school improvement plans in other places will use MCAS data as an indicator, but that's not usually always available. certainly for a July 1st deadline.
Not even close.
Not even close. I mean, maybe you can get a look at the embargoed stuff in early September, but that's stretching it. So I think like an earlier deadline does force us to think differently about what's the data source you're using to develop your plan.
So for now, what date would you like?
Let's say, what's the last day of August? August 30th, is that?
August 31st,
August 31st.
or before the start of school.
Do you want to just say
Should
before
we
the
say
start of
before the
school?
first
I like
Before-
before the start of
No
Or-
later
school.
than the first day.
Then the
school.
first.
I was actually going to say no later than the day that teachers report.
Okay.
First day. What?
The day that teachers
Teachers report.
teachers
Teachers
report.
for
No later than the first day teachers report.
Presumably because you are
Teachers
going to be doing
report.
PD those 2
Yep.
days, and it should be aligned to the things you're doing.
I'd like to put more specific, so no later than the first day teachers report back to school?
Yeah, for the upcoming school year.
For-
yeah, for the new
for the new school year.
The day of the big assembly.
Report.
You should word it just like
For the
that.
big assembly.
Yeah, right, exactly.
First day teachers report for the,
For convocation or whatever.
the
New
new
school year.
First
school
day of the new
year.
school year. So my standard question:
Okay.
How much does this
Did-
cost?
Did any of this change? I know there was a school council before. Does this new one? Is there any additional cost? Okay. Number 3.
Well, can I be a pain in the butt for a moment?
No.
No.
Just that there's additional, right? Like I
Well,
just word-
well, I think going back to what you said before, when we were talking about when the things meet, it does say here that they have to meet
after school.
Is that when they're meeting now, and does that,
I think I would refer to that this is part of the working conditions of a staff member. And
Okay.
it's a voluntary
So do we need to
volunteer
put in
committee.
some?
I think
something
that's
here
pretty
about
clear,
volunteer?
It's
actually.
pretty,
Where is it clear that it's volunteer?
No, but I'm trying to think of the law.
yeah, I wouldn't,
Yeah, 'cause
that's,
it follows Mass General
Mhm.
Law,
Okay.
7138.
All right.
Well, they list
Okay.
on here the legal
Okay.
references.
So then my only other question is, so the number 3, around their guidelines to define the role of the school council, it says review of the school building budget. Do they have any is it their goal, is their
No.
guideline just to review it, or do they have to track to it? Is it just, hey, here it is, review, so they have no input on it, they have no accountability? The school council has no accountability to it, just reviewing it. Is that true?
The history of the school council is that in drafting the 93 reform law, there were a whole bunch of tasks that were taken away from the school committee, like approving who the janitor is, that kind of stuff, that micromanaging that school committees did. And so the question came up, and also, I can't remember the exact detail, but I believe at one point, the school committee had to approve every teacher hire. All kinds of stuff that we took out. And so somebody said, what's the school committee going to do? And I said, well, maybe they could talk about what's going on in the curriculum in the schools, and then we could have these councils who would come to the school committee and talk to them about improving the school. It was never about giving them budget authority.
But they need to know their budget.
Yeah, so this is
Understand
just
it.
reviewing.
they review
bu-
the
so
school
that's my
budget,
question.
understanding what the school budget is. That's
Okay,
just,
but they're not accountable for making sure
No.
they
No.
stick to it. It's just they're reviewing, hey, we've got $100,000 for the school. There you go. That's
Well,
just
it's
kind of
kind of
clarifying they're
like-
not tracking to it at all.
What could this school do to improve instruction?
right, I think what the school councils do is they work with the principal, and if there's an initiative that's happening, they may say to the principal, I don't know, let's think about our PD line, and is there some, I don't know, they can, I can't even think of the word that I'm trying to come up with, but like consult is not really the right word, but they work in conjunction with. Collaborate, thank you so very much. She knew it was a C word. I know that didn't sound right. Hopefully
We
nobody's
didn't hear
watching.
that.
Collaborate with the principal. I'm going to say that like I'm on Saturday Night Live. So I keep a straight face. Oh, goodness. But yeah, they don't create the budget. They don't oversee the budget. They're not making sure the principal's spending correctly. But there were times that the school councils might encourage the school principal we have 27 kids in second grade. You need to go to your superintendent and say, advocate for another second grade class, which then affects the budget in some ways like that.
So school councils, from what I'm understanding, have been a little bit out of practice. What can we do to get them back into practice?
We are working on that. So and all of our schools have a school council. They all submit their their agendas to Michelle. She posts their agendas. It's just, it is tricky. I think a school council works well in the middle and the high school. As a former elementary principal, I think you rely very heavily on your PTOs or your PTACs. And I think it's helping the principals and the school councils come up with those agendas and knowing what they're working on when they're having those meetings, and reviewing the kinds of things that they're doing. It's a little bit trickier, but we are working on that, and we talk about it, we remind the principals all the time. I did hear a little bit of that feedback in one of my community chats. A parent was just asking a little bit more about school councils and how they're run, and that some schools are a little bit more, they hear a little bit more about that. So it's education. I think that's probably something that we'll tackle in one of our professional learning arcs. We have a few other things that seem to be a little bit higher priority, but this is definitely something that we need to touch base and review with all the principals, and then probably do a little bit of a training on school councils for once they're formed, like bringing their members in and having we could do a district training on this is what a school council does, in essence. And sometimes, I worked in a district where sometimes the school council would come with a principal when they presented their school improvement plan. Because usually it's a principal and a parent that's the chair, so you co-chair together, and they would come together.
All right. Okay, so we need to remove the prior BDFA, BDFA E1, BDFE. Wait, no, we have back ones to this too. BDFE, BDFE1, BDFE2, BDFE3, removing those. And then I would need a motion to accept BDFA and then BDFAE as amended.
Do you need two motions or one?
I think we need to do,
I think we need to do two.
Yeah.
well, yes. So we'll do one as removing these ones, and then we can do the second to adopt. We just need to remember to do the BDFAE as amended.
All right, so Madam Chair, I will move that we remove policies BDFA and BDFA E3.
No, through.
Through BDFA E3. That's the first motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay. Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
And now, Madam Chair, I will move that we adopt consolidated policies BDFA and BDFAE as amended this evening.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Those policies are adopted. Thank you. All right, last, we had heard the school improvement plans from our elementary schools and from our middle,
I should say 6 to 12.
yeah, middle and high school, so it should be 6 to 12. And we need to vote to accept them.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the school improvement plans as presented by the principals at the previous two meetings and as
Displayed on the
documented in the
screen.
packet.
Yeah, there's no changes from what we saw before, right?
Nope.
So, yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
And I vote yes, those are accepted. All right. Any public comment? Hearing none. Our next meeting is November 14th. The school committee will be having a retreat. It'll be a working session. It will not be broadcasted or recorded, which has been approved by the town manager as required by town charter. The session will be held at the North Andover Middle School in the library. The meeting will come to order at 5 p.m. and go into executive session in the new wing, returning at approximately 6 p.m. for the open session, which the public is welcome to attend. The workshop will have a focus on budgets. All right.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
Oh, you could do it. You could do it.
All right. Mr. Hicks.
Yes.
Mr. Moskovich. Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Cormier. And I vote yes. We are adjourned.